Howdy folks, welcome to the BurningIceTech channel. Today we're going to be covering CompTIA ITF Plus practice questions. Now for those of you that don't know the official name of this course, should you go and do the actual course, it's called Information Technology Fundamentals, but most folks just call it by its short abbreviation, which is ITF Plus. So that's the CompTIA ITF Plus course. And in this video, we're going to be covering some practice questions which measures you on the same skills as the official exam and basically covers the same objectives as the official exam. So if you are in the process of studying for the official exam and you're hoping to obtain the certification associated with this course, you're in the right place, guys, because these questions will test you on the exact same stuff and you'll be in good hands. Now, folks, if you want to know when the next practice question video comes out for this specific course, maybe consider subscribing as well, because then you might not miss it out. So on that note, if you haven't not done it already, please give this video a like. I do put a lot of time into making these videos, and considering that I'm doing it for free, you can think of the like as payment for the video. I'm giving it away for free anyway, so you might as well give it a like, and at least then more people out there will hopefully see this video that actually needs it, that cannot afford actual training. I have done the full official course for this on my channel, so if you'd like to see those videos, you can find them on the channel. There's 5 modules, and I've made a dedicated video for each of those 5 modules. So feel free to go and check the full official course on the channel as well, completely for free. It's about roughly between 6 and 8 hours to cover the full course if you'd like to do that as well. It's completely for free, so why not? And like I said earlier, if you haven't done it already, maybe consider subscribing. Otherwise, you might miss out on when I release the next video. Alright, folks, let's go learn something. Question 1. Which of the following allows wireless devices to communicate to a wired network? Now pay special attention to the words wireless and wired. You need to know the difference between those. So here's the 4 possible answers I've got for you folks. If we look at the first one, that would be firewall. What does a firewall do? Now first of all, you can get software firewalls and hardware firewalls. In a nutshell, their purpose is to block or allow things like IP addresses, websites, MAC addresses, that kind of stuff. It's to block or allow something. Now, the question states it's about allowing wireless devices to communicate to a wired network. So I don't think firewall is going to cut it. We're not talking about blocking or allowing people from accessing certain resources. Could it be a switch? Now, a switch is a network device, folks, and its purpose is to connect devices to the network so they can go and communicate. However, a network switch is used to connect wired devices to allow them to communicate to your network. The question specifically states we need to allow wireless devices. So a switch is not going to work. A switch specifically works with wired devices, not wireless. So it's not B. If the question said wired, then yes, it could very well have been B, but it's not wired. Could it be C? Access point. Now, access points, guys, are commonly referred to as an AP for short, but you can see what AP stands for. It's for access point. It's a device you would go and plug into a network cable, and it essentially goes and broadcasts that network wirelessly. So the devices that needs to connect or that wants to connect wirelessly, they can do so. And that is actually the answer here, because the question states we need to go and allow wireless devices to connect. So if you were to go and grab an access point, plug in one of your wires into that access point, it's going to take that very same network and broadcast it wirelessly. And then devices like phones, tablets, and laptops, they can go and connect to your network wirelessly. So the answer here, guys, so far is C. Looking at answer D, UPS. That's an abbreviation for uninterruptible power supply. It's a battery of sorts. It gives your machines clean energy. So if there's a power surge or the voltage drops, it's going to keep the voltage consistent. And should there be a power failure of some sort, it's going to keep the device up and running for an X amount of time, but eventually it is going to run out of power. So it's got nothing to do with power, this question, so we can rule out D. We're ruling out B because B is limited to wired devices, and we're not trying to block or allow devices, so it's not A. So the answer here, folks, remains C. Question 2. Which of the following devices would be used to provide a centralized means to distribute one or more services to a group of clients and usually possesses a role on a LAN? All right, now let's look at answer A, a workstation. So that's normally going to be a desktop computer in most cases. It could be a laptop, but generally when we say workstation, we mean desktop. Now, could that be used as a centralized means to distribute one or more services? It could be used, folks. Honestly, it could, but it's not normally the way we would go and do it. So if all else fails and it's a very poor company, a super small company, you've got nothing else to use, sure, theoretically it is possible, but it's not how we would normally go and do it. Is it answer B, a server? So far, yes, that's my answer because that is normally how we would go and do it. Normally, a server is a centralized device of sorts, and on that server, we would normally go and add what we call roles. These roles give that server a purpose on the network, and it is going to go and render one or more services to your network and to your users and to your devices. So far the answer is B, folks. Looking at answer C, could it be a laptop? Yes, it actually could. Now the answer is not C because that's not normally how we do it. So just like answer A, yes, it is possible. And if all else fails and you've got no other way or means to do it, yes, sure, you can go and use a laptop. But that's absolutely not normally how we would go and do it. That's definitely not best practice. If you go look at answer D, a mobile, no. A mobile device is normally going to be your absolute last resort, and normally they lack the capabilities and functionalities and features to achieve this goal. So I'm going to completely rule out D. A and C, yes, if all else fails and you've got absolutely no other way around it, then I would suppose you can go and do A or C. But the answer remains B, folks. A server. Question 3. One of your users complains about not being able to access a website. The user mentions they receive an error message when they're trying to go to the site. You ask the user a few questions to find out more about the issue. You open a browser locally, that means you're going to open it on your own machine, and you browse to the same site as, well, this user. Which of the following troubleshooting steps are you using by browsing to the same site? All right, so let's summarize. You had a user and he or she is moaning and groaning about not being able to access some sort of website. Apparently, they're getting some sort of error message. Now, what you are doing about it for the time being is on your own machine locally, you're trying to visit the exact same site that this user is supposedly, complaining about. Now, what do we call that in troubleshooting terms when you go and try and access the same site as the user when they go and moan about it? Are we going to call it establishing a plan of action? No. A plan of action is normally if you know what the problem is, what the cause is, then you would go and establish a plan of action to try and resolve this. We don't know yet what the problem is, so we cannot establish a plan of action. We need to try and figure out what the problem is first. So it's not A, folks. Is it B? Gathering information. Now, gathering information would be if you're going to go and keep asking the user questions and you're going to do this and that. It's not B so far. I'm not going to rule it out completely, but I'm not inclined to think it's B. Is it C? Duplicate the problem. Yes, because they specifically mention you are visiting the same site. What do we call it when you're visiting the same site? They're not asking you what do we call it when you're asking the user questions, because yes, it was mentioned in this question that you are asking questions, but that's not what they're asking you about. They're specifically asking you, what do we call it when you try and visit the same site as the user? What do we call that part? That part, folks, is called duplicating the problem. But if they were referring to the part where you were asking the user questions to find out more about the issue, if they were referring to that part and they asked you what we call that, yes, that would probably be called gathering information. But they're specifically talking about, you know, you mimicking the user, and that's, well, duplicating the problem. Looking at answer D, and we can probably rule out answer D without even reading it, is to implement a solution. Now, to implement a solution, I need to know, once again, what the problem is. So I can't establish a plan of action. I can't implement a solution because in this scenario, we don't know what the problem is. We don't know what the cause is. We're simply trying to duplicate it first so we can then hopefully see this thing for ourselves and then hopefully figure out what the heck it might be. So the answer remains C, folks. Question 4. One of your users is attempting to print a document through a wireless printer and sees an error stating that the operation could not be completed. Which of the following should the user do? Now, folks, is it A, ensure both devices are connected to the LAN? Could be, just because they're both wireless does not necessarily mean they're connected to the same network, folks. There could be multiple wireless networks, and for all we know, they're both connected to two different wireless networks, or maybe one or both of them is not connected to any form of wireless network. So first of all, make sure they are connected, and make sure they are connected to the same wireless network. So far the answer sounds like it actually might be A. Looking at answer B, enable task scheduling. No. So task scheduling is normally something you would go and do in a tool like Task Scheduler. It's not limited to Task Scheduler, folks, but there's a tool built into both the client and server operating systems. It's completely for free. It's called Task Scheduler, and that tool or platform is used to go and automate certain things on your computer. We're not trying to automate things per se. We're just trying to print a document that would normally print just fine, and now for some reason it doesn't want to print. So we're not trying to automate something, so it's not B. C says, check if the printer has filament. Now, could be if this was a 3D printer, folks. We're not trying to print a 3D thing here. It doesn't mention anywhere anything regarding a 3D thing. It says print a document. A document is normally a piece of paper, which means you're going to use a printer that uses some sort of ink. So that printer would probably be a laser printer most likely these days, but it can also potentially be an inkjet printer. Heck, guys, this can even be a thermal printer or a dot matrix printer because they all use some sort of ink. Now, a 3D printer, if you know what those are, they use something called filament. It's basically a special kind of plastic, if I have to summarize it. So by saying check if the printer has filament, it's got nothing to do with this printer because they mentioned, printing a document, which means we would need to go and check if there's actually ink. So if C said check if the printer has ink or toner or anything like that, then it could actually have been answer C. But they specifically said filament, so we're going to completely rule out answer C here. D says verify other users are not printing the same document. That's not going to have any influence, folks. If there happens to be two machines or two devices and they both happen to be printing the same document, it's not going to make a difference. You'll just have two copies of the same freaking document. That's all that's going to happen. So it's definitely not D. It's not supposed to have any influence on this scenario. So the answer remains A. Ensure both devices are actually connected to the same network here, because it could very well be that the printer is on one network and the computer is on another network, or they're both not on this network. So there's some sort of issue with regards to the network. Question 5. You have a user who is buying a laptop. The user will have a lot of personal and confidential information on the laptop. The user wants to ensure data cannot be accessed by anyone, even if the laptop is stolen. Which of the following should be set up to accomplish this? Alright, folks, is it compression? No. Compression is something you would do on a machine to basically get files and documents to take up less space on the hard drive. We're not concerned about space in this specific scenario. If you look at the question, we're concerned about data getting into the wrong hands. So I suppose in a nutshell, we're concerned about security. We don't want data getting into the wrong hands should this laptop ever be lost or stolen. Now, compression is just going to make the data take up less space, but it's not going to ensure safety and security of your data. So it's absolutely not A. Is the answer B, encryption? Well, that actually is a very good answer, folks. So far, I'm going to go with B until I've seen the other answers. Encryption is normally something we would actually go and do on machines, especially in laptops that are mobile. So God forbid, if this laptop happens to get stolen, lost, whatever the case might be, we're not going to get the laptop back. I mean, that's a fact. But at least we can sleep at night knowing that the data is safe. that perpetrator, that thief that's stolen the laptop, they will never be able to access the data on that laptop because the hard drive is encrypted. We normally go and use something called BitLocker for that. Not that you need to worry about that, but BitLocker is normally the tool of choice to go and encrypt your hard drive. They will basically have to go and remove the hard drive out of that laptop, throw it in the trash, get a new laptop, put that into the laptop, and then they can use the laptop again. So the answer so far is B. Looking at answer C, permissions. No, permissions, you will have some level of security, but not much. Permissions is normally what we'll go and use for the individual accounts on the PC itself. So if someone logs in with one account, they might not be able to access certain information versus logging in with another account, they might actually be able to access the information. So we're not too concerned about permissions. Permissions, it's some security, but it's not the best. You can actually bypass that very easily, folks. So I wouldn't say it's the worst answer, but it's not my answer of choice. B is still better than C. Is it D? Auditing? No. Auditing is the same as logs and analytics. It's just going to show you who did what, when, where, but it doesn't actually do anything about it. So considering that the laptop might be lost or stolen, auditing is going to be impossible, folks. Auditing is something you do afterwards on the device, assuming you still have access, and then you can go and see who did what, when, where, and why. So we're not concerned about who did what, when, where, and why. We're concerned about blocking them, period, from gaining access in the first place. So the answer here remains B, folks, encryption. Question 6. A system administrator uses a program that interacts directly with hardware to manage storage, network, and virtual machines. This program is an example of what? Is this A storage area network? Now, guys, a storage area network, the abbreviation for that is normally SAN, S-A-N, because it stands obviously for storage area network. And in a nutshell, this is normally when we go and combine multiple storage servers. It doesn't have to be a server, but it's normally when we go and combine two or more servers that are basically clones of one another. We go and combine these servers, and they will act as a storage location in a company. Now, the reason why we combine them is not always because we want more storage. It's normally to give us redundancy and fault tolerance. I'm not going to lie to you, this is very expensive to go and implement, and it's quite frankly actually very complicated too in some cases. Looking at answer B, a network attached storage, which we call NAS for short. That is an actual device which we plug into a network cable. You plug a power cable into it as well. It normally uses normal computer hard drives, and it's just a storage location or a network. So A and B is both just storage locations on the network. A storage area network is a bunch of servers we combine together to form one large storage area network of lots of redundancy and fault tolerance and all kinds of fancy functions and features. And NAS is, well, it is a storage location. It generally does have some sort of redundancy because it normally uses RAID 1, for those of you that knows what RAID 1 is. But it doesn't allow us to manage our hardware or networking and things like that. So it doesn't really meet the criteria in this question. A driver, looking at answer C, that does allow a computer system administrator to kind of interact with the hardware, but it's not really exactly what a driver does. A driver is kind of like a translator between your computer's operating system and the hardware itself. So on its own, the operating system cannot really go and communicate very well with the hardware and vice versa. So we need something in between, a translator of sorts, and that is where a driver comes into play. It's like a middleman. The middleman allows the hardware and the operating system to communicate with one another and understand one another. Now the question says a system administrator uses a program that interacts. A driver, folks, is not a program. A NAS is not a program. And a SAN is not a program. So the only answer that's left here by process of elimination is D, hypervisor. Now, hypervisor is a special kind of software we use. So there we go. It's a program that allows us to go and create what is known as a virtual machine. A virtual machine is exactly like a real computer. It just doesn't have its own actual hardware. It doesn't have its own RAM, its own CPU, its own hard drive. But other than that, you can go and install an operating system, and other than that, it'll be exactly like a real computer. So this hypervisor, which you get many of, there's many kinds, guys. So one of the ones that actually comes with Windows is something called Hyper-V. Microsoft literally took the name hypervisor and shorten it to the name Hyper-V, and that's the name they've given to their, well, hypervisor. There's other ones you can go and download and install. A lot of them will cost you money. You get, for example, VMware, you get VirtualBox, Oracle, Virtual PC, and many. They all essentially do the same thing. So the answer here, folks, remains D, hypervisor. Question 7. Which of the following is the final step in the standard troubleshooting methodology? So for those of you that don't know yet, maybe you did not follow the course that I have on my channel. The troubleshooting methodology consists of about 6 steps. It used to be just 4, but now it's about 6 steps. So if someone complains about an issue, let's say on their computer, this can even be you yourself. There's a list of steps you need to follow. And this is, involves things like identifying the problem and eventually troubleshooting the problem, fixing the problem, documenting everything and all that. So it's about roughly 6 steps, guys. Now, what is the final step? After you've really located the problem, you've solved the problem, everything is A-OK and hunky-dory again. What would be the final step? Is it A, identify the problem? No, that would literally be the first step. The first step in the troubleshooting methodology is to identify the problem. How you do that, that's up to you. But one of the most common ways would be to go and ask the user questions like, sir, ma'am, when last did this machine work? Has there been anything you've recently changed on the machine, hardware, software-wise? That kinds of problems. B, verify operation. So that is close to the end, but it does kind of at first glance seem like it might be the answer, but that is not the final step, guys. So after you fixed the machine, yes, you want to verify that it's working, and you're normally going to make sure that the user can see that it's working, and you're even going to make them sign for it, because they like to turn around afterwards and say, no, you didn't fix it, even though you did actually fix it. The very last step, guys, is going to be answer C. Document the solution and document the cause. So everything's going to get documented. You're going to document what the initial problem was, what it came in with, all the steps you took, what ended up being the problem, what ended up being the solution. Everything gets documented. So later on, if you need to go and do research or someone else needs to do research, helpful for that. If something goes wrong later down the line, you can go and backtrack what you did, who did this, all of that. So it can be used for so many things. And then the last answer there, which is not the answer, implement the solution. So you can see that's going to be kind of in the middle. In the beginning, you're going to try and still figure out what the problem is. In the end, you've already, figured out the problem. You're still busy implementing the solution and document it. So D, that's kind of in the middle, I would say. Question 8. UPS provides protection against what? Is it A, denial of service, which is more commonly known as DOS for short? That's a special kind of attack, folks. So this attack, which is, I wouldn't say it's malware, it's more of an attack on your machine or your systems or your network. It's when something or someone denies you access to a service. This can be an actual simple service on your actual machine, something like the print spooler. And if they deny you access to that, you simply won't be able to print. So they're technically denying you the printing service. It could be that maybe they're denying you access to a website, internal or public, or a server, internal or public. This can be done via many ways. It could be that something has been shut down. It could be that you're just being blocked. Maybe the service is being overloaded to a point where it cannot cope with the load, or where it just times out and crashes. So it's not A. So UPS does not provide you protection against that. UPS, in case you don't know, stands short for uninterruptible power supply. Power supply. Now, me saying that should kind of give you the answer here, shouldn't it? By looking at the answers. So it's answer D, folks. So UPS is a form of battery backup. And if there's a power failure, whether it just be a small dip in the power for a couple of seconds, or whether it be a power failure for a prolonged period of time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour or so, a UPS will ideally keep your systems up and running for an X amount of time until the battery obviously runs out, and that allows you to go and save all your stuff and shut down your systems properly. It's not necessarily designed to keep it up, for a very, very long time. It's generally just so that you can go and save your stuff and shut down the systems properly so that they do not crash. Now, what it also protects against, which is actually not an answer here, is against unclean power. So if the voltage goes up, a bit of a spike, or it goes down, It keeps the energy clean at a consistent voltage. So if you're in a country where your voltage is 110 to 120, I know the United States and a lot of European countries runs on a voltage of 110 or so, it'll keep it on that voltage. If you are in one of the countries where the voltage has to be, let's say, 220 to 240 somewhere, a lot of countries are like that, especially if you go look in Africa, then it'll keep it at that voltage. Yeah, and in case you didn't know about those voltages, guys, different countries use different voltages. It's not always the same. You'll find that even the wall sockets are not the same in all countries. So if you have a wall socket, for a certain electrical appliance, and you go to a different country, the chances are that appliance might not be able to plug into the wall socket, and the chances are the voltage in that wall socket might not be suitable for your electrical appliance. So always make sure you double check that when you go to a different country. Anyway, so the answer here, folks, is D. It's not B, which is a replay attack. A replay attack is when someone or something is in the middle when you connect to something. So if I'm connecting to a website or a server, there's someone or something in between, and they're intercepting this communication in the hopes of getting something sensitive, something valuable, like a username or a password. Or this could be a token, if you know what a token is. And as soon as I disconnect, they will reconnect to that service or whatever this is as if they are me and basically pretend to be me. Hence the name, a replay attack. So they're going to go and, frame me, if I have to put it that way. Now, UPS is not good for network failure unless, it depends on how we look at it. So if the reason for your network failure is maybe because of a network appliance not having power, and if you connect this UPS to that network appliance so that if the power goes away, that the network appliance still has power, in that instance, yes, it can actually help. But that's not what they mean here. They just mean in general, what does a UPS provide you protection against? And in general, it is to prevent power outages, not network failure. So the answer remains D, folks. Question 9. A user in your company wants to access company training videos from a DVD. Which of the following components would allow the user to accomplish this task? Alright, folks, we've got 4 items here that they've given us. Which one of these 4 will allow you to basically read a DVD or access a DVD, however you want to go and phrase that? Now, looking at the first answer, optical drive, believe it or not, that's actually the answer here. An optical drive is what one would use to go and open a DVD or a CD. Nowadays, it'll just be a DVD. And even when it comes to DVDs, this is not something we really find in machines anymore. If you go to a computer store or a tech store, or any store these days that sells a computer, chances are pretty decent you might not actually get an optical drive for your computer anymore. A lot of computers, folks, do not come out of optical drives anymore because we don't use them. The only thing you might use them for is to install the Windows operating system or whatever operating system you want to go and install. And even with that, we'd rather go and use a memory stick because it's just so much faster and more convenient. So it's not really something we use anymore for anything really. All software is downloaded these days. And if you really do need to install it locally, it'll probably be via flash drive or via the network in most cases. Now, answer B, hard disk drive. That is where you would store information on your computer. Whether you're using a laptop, desktop, or server, hard disk drive is a mechanical drive. I'm saying mechanical because way in the beginning we only had hard drives. All hard drives were just referred to as hard drives. Nowadays, we get different kinds of hard drives. You get a solid state hard drive, which is actually answer C, and you get a mechanical hard drive, which is answer B. So the old school hard drives, which used to be the only kind of hard drives, they were just called hard drives back in the day. But now since we get solid state hard drives, the old hard drives are more often nowadays referred to as a mechanical hard drive because it's got movable parts. A solid state hard drive is static memory. Way, way, way faster. And if you were to drop that sucker, nothing would break. It does have a couple of drawbacks, though. So you cannot go and read and write to it nearly as much as you can do with a conventional hard drive. But it does have the speed benefit. So you're going to have to go and choose what benefits do you want. Looking at answer D, a flash drive, which is sometimes called a thumb drive, a memory stick. It's got so many names, folks. I'm going to show you guys pictures of what these actually look like. So we already know the answer is A, optical drive. So there is a picture of an optical drive, in case you were not sure what I was talking about. So that picture is for a desktop PC's optical drive. There is a picture of a random brand of hard disk drive. So that would be the old mechanical ones. There is a picture of a random brand of a solid state drives. So that's going to be the ones that's so fast it's got no movable parts. And there is a picture of a normal flash drive, folks. So the answer here, folks, is A. Question 10. You just connected a printer to a workstation, but the workstation does not recognize the printer. Which of the following does the workstation most likely need for the printer to function? Is it an ink cartridge? Could be. So you'll see in the question they use the word most, and it's highlighted in a different color. Now in the exam it will not necessarily be in a different color, but what you will see in the exam is they will sometimes have a question and the word best or most will be in capital letters, and often it will be in bold. Now, to kind of get you guys used to that, I'm also putting the word most in capital letters, and I'm even putting it in a different color just to draw attention to that. Now, the reason why they will do it in the exam is because there's normally more than one answer that's correct, and they want to know if you know which one is more correct, which one is the best suited. So there could be a chance that there's only one answer that's correct, but in most cases you'll find there's more than one that's correct, and they want to see if you know which one is the best for that situation. Now, if we look at this question, the printer has been connected, but it does not recognize the printer at all, altogether. Now, if it's an ink cartridge problem, folks, the printer might not print. I mean, that could be one problem. It might tell you there's no ink, or it'll give you an error. But the most likely scenario is the printer just won't print. That's what's going to happen if you've got no ink cartridge or if it's empty. Now, they're saying it does not recognize the printer at all. So I'm going to rule out A. Is it USB cable? Now, if the USB cable was a problem, it would not pick up the printer. Here they say it does not recognize the printer. So it does pick it up, it just doesn't recognize it. It doesn't know what it is. It's like, okay, I see something, but I don't know what this is. So the machine, your computer does detect it, or the workstation does detect the printer. It just does not know what it is. Now, for it to be able to detect the printer, we can assume the USB cable is present here, so it's not answer B. Is it C? No, guys, permission would not block you from recognizing the printer. You will either have access to the printer or you would not have access to the printer. Period. That's it. That's end of it. End of story. You either have access or you don't have access. It's not going to have any influence whether your printer is recognized or not. Now, considering that I've just eliminated A, B, and C by process of elimination, you probably know the answer is D, driver. The driver, as I've said earlier in the previous question, is like a translator, and that translator is between the operating system and hardware. In this case, the hardware is the printer. Now, on its own, your computer's operating system does not know what the printer is. It has no way or means to communicate to the printer. It's kind of like it's speaking a foreign language. Now, the driver is going to act like a medium, a middleman, or a translator, whatever you want to go and call it. And it's going to allow your operating system to know what this is and understand it. They're going to be able to communicate, which is why this question initially said it cannot recognize the printer, is because there was no driver, or it was probably the wrong driver. And if there's no driver or incorrect driver, it will not recognize the printer and no communication would occur. So the most likely answer here, folks, is D. Quite frankly, I think that's the only answer here, is D. Question 11. Which of the following security concerns is a threat to confidentiality? Now, what is confidentiality? Let's quickly recap on that. That is if you want to try and keep something, well, how can I put this? Private. So this could be your salary or your payslip. Could be your medical records. The point is it's for your eyes only and maybe one or two other individuals. So if it's your medical records, it'll be for your eyes and maybe your doctor or your medical practitioner. If it is your law stuff, it'll probably be for you and your lawyer's eyes. If it is your salary or payslip, it'll be for you and whoever's in charge of releasing your money, that kind of things. Okay, so now we've got an idea what confidentiality is. It does not necessarily mean you've got security, but it does mean something needs to be private. It's for certain people's eyes only. So which of the following security concerns is a threat to that confidentiality? Is it a replay attack? I wouldn't be too concerned about a replay attack in a sense of confidentiality. That's a security concern, yes. Because if someone happens to steal your username and password or your token, because we did mention this in the previous question, then they can go and reconnect to a resource like a server and pretend to be you. So that's not a confidentiality concern, that's an identity concern. Looking at answer B, dumpster diving. So that's when someone, normally it's a person, goes through your trash in the hopes of getting something sensitive. It's not necessarily an actual dumpster, for those of you that know what a dumpster is. It could literally just be a small little trash bin beneath your desk, and maybe you've got a couple of pieces of papers in there, sticky notes and stuff you've scribbled on, and on them you've scribbled something important. So that could be a confidentiality concern. Maybe you've scribbled something on there which is for your eyes only, and someone's going to see that. Now, that could possibly be the answer here. Looking at answer C, denial of service. That's normally an attack, guys, and it's got nothing to do with confidentiality. Denial of service is to block you or someone or something from having access to a certain service. Has absolutely nothing to do with confidentiality. Answer D, service outage. So service outage is, well, when you don't have access to a certain service. This could be a website, could be a server, could be a telephone service, could be an internet service. It's got, once again, nothing to do with confidentiality. It just means a certain service is now unavailable. Hell, guys, this could even be a power service if we really want to be technical about it. So the answer here is and remains answer B. Dumpster diving, because someone can go through your trash. Can be something as simple as the bin beneath your desk, which has got pieces of paper on it. Maybe you've written something on that piece of paper, and someone's going to see something on that piece of paper they should not be seeing. Which is why you should always make sure you get rid of your trash properly, and which is why you'll find in some companies, depending on the nature of the business, they'll actually force people to go and use what we call paper shredders to make sure people cannot do something called dumpster diving. Question 12. Which of the following is a primary confidentiality concern? Now, there we go again with confidentiality. I'm not going to explain again what confidentiality is because we just explained that in question 11. So, looking at answer A, destructing. Destructing, that could be that someone needs to go and destroy it. So I wouldn't say that's the biggest concern here. It's plausible. Maybe someone did not destroy this hard drive or this document or whatever properly that was supposed to do it. So could be a concern. I'm just going to leave it there for now. Let's just look at the other answers first. B, altering. No, that's not a confidentiality concern, folks. That's an integrity concern. So we normally talk about what we call the CIA triad. Capital C, capital I, capital A. CIA triad. The C is confidentiality, the I is integrity, and the A is availability. So that's the CIA that we normally talk about in IT terms. So the I, being integrity, is what we would be concerned about if it was an altering matter, which means it's not authentic, it's not original. Someone has altered something. So if I send you an email, how do you know it's original and that it's authentic and that it's actually coming from me? You don't. That would be an integrity concern. Now, looking at answer C, eavesdropping. So just like in real life, where someone can go and eavesdrop and kind of listen in on your conversation, maybe it's a verbal eavesdropping. You're having a conversation with someone and someone else is standing nearby. They're listening in on your conversation. That could be an eavesdropping, but in IT terms, it's slightly different. Same concept, slightly different though. So someone is digitally speaking, listening in on your conversation. This could be because they're using something like a packet sniffer, if you have an idea what that is. If you don't worry about it. It's not something you need to know in this course. All you need to know, it's a special kind of software which allows them to, digitally speaking, listen in on your traffic. And they can basically see what you're doing or, that kinds of stuff. So C is very plausibly the answer here, folks. Looking at D, impersonation. No. That could be maybe an integrity concern, but impersonation is more of a identity concern. Impersonation is someone is pretending to be you or something they're not. So that is more of a spoofing concern or an identity concern, but it's not a confidentiality concern. So the answer here is and remains answer C, folks, eavesdropping. Question 13. Your IT department is establishing a new password policy for employees. Specifically, the policy reads as follows. Passwords must not contain common dictionary words. So these are normal words you can actually find in a dictionary or in a sentence. So it has to be a mix of things, not allowed to be an actual word. Passwords must contain at least one special character. So that would be like the percentage sign, hash, the dollar sign, the @ sign, some sort of special character. Passwords must be different from the last 6 passwords used. So it's not allowed to be the same as any one of your last previous 6 passwords, basically. Passwords must use at least one capital letter or number. Okay, so if you've got a password which has got some letters in it and it forms some sort of word, not completely because we already saw we've got to have special characters in there, at least one of these letters has got to be capital. Or if the whole thing is in capital letters, then at least one has got to be in small case, you know? All right, so now that we've read the policy or what they've got in mind, which of the following practices are being employed? And you'll notice we've got to choose 2. So there's 6 to choose from, folks. So looking at answer A, are we employing password lockout? I would say no. So for those of you that don't know what password lockout is, normally if someone gets a password wrong an X amount of times, the account of a device would either time out or lock itself. If it times out, it'll be, for example, for 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, you can try again. And if you get it wrong again after that, it'll time out again for either the same period or a longer period. Normally, it's a longer period. So that would be password lockout. They don't mention anything there about something, some device being locked out after a couple of failed attempts. So it's not A. I can completely rule that out already off the bat. Looking at answer B, password complexity. So far, that seems like a very plausible answer. If you look at the beginning, they mentioned that it has to contain at least one special character, has to have uppercase and lowercase. So that leads me to believe that they've got some sense of complexity in mind here. So far, B is a plausible answer. Looking at answer C, password expiration. Now, if I look at the 4 things that they mentioned initially, I don't see anything there mentioned regarding this password no longer working after an X amount of time. Let's say 6 weeks or 2 months or 3 months. Nowhere do they mention that this thing expires or ceases to function after a certain period. So I can with ease say that, it's not C. I'm going to rule out C. B is still plausible. Looking at answer D, password history. Yes, so far that also seems plausible to me. I think that's also being employed. And the reason I think so is because if you look at the third bullet point at the top, it says passwords must be different from the last 6 passwords used. That is why I'm saying they've got something being employed here regarding password history. So people are not allowed to use a password that's the same as one of their previous 6 passwords. So far D also looks like an answer. So my answer so far is B and D. E, password length. Now, they don't mention anything regarding that here, so I'm going to rule it out. So normally the standard password normally be about 8 characters. You'll find that most devices and platforms will force you to have an 8-character password. But they don't mention that here. They don't say anything that it's got to be a minimum of an 8-character or a 10-character or 12 or 15-character. Anything regarding that is mentioned here. So I'm going to rule out E as well. Looking at F, password age. That's kind of the same as password expiration. So once again, we ruled out C, and considering that F is pretty much the same as C, I'm going to rule out F as well. They don't mention anything regarding the password no longer working after a certain period. So the answers is and remains B and D. Password complexity, because they specifically mentioned we need special characters, has to be uppercase and lowercase. It's got to be a mix of things. That's password complexity. Now, the more complex your password is, folks, just FYI, the harder it is to crack it and the harder it is to guess it. If it was an actual word, then I can go and use what we call a dictionary attack. But if you're going to go and use a very long password, a very complex password, it just takes so much more time and effort to actually crack that password. Anyway, folks, moving on to question 14. Which of the following would most likely prevent malware sent as a compromised file via email from infecting a person's computer? Alright, so looking at the available answers, folks, which one of these 4 would help prevent a malware infection that might have been sent via a compromised file in an email? Would clearing your browser cache do that? So if you don't know what your browser cache is, folks, that is temporary memory built into your browser. Now the cache, the idea behind that is it's supposed to store a website you visited recently, or at least a part of that, so that the next time you visit that same website, it's going to load faster and it's going to use less data because a lot of the stuff has been cached in the browser's temporary memory. So that is good and bad. It's good because it gives you a faster experience, it's lighter on data, But it's sometimes bad because you get some of these spam advertisers that'll go and dig in your cookies or your browser cache to see where you visited, so they know what ads to go and show you. It's targeted advertising. So, but that's not really malware. So I don't think it's A. Looking at B, patching. That's generally a good thing to go and do. So normally, if you've got a computer or software or whatever, it's always a good idea to keep it as up to date as possible. Update your operating system as often as you possibly can. And the same goes for any form of security software and just your software in general. This is so that if there is some sort of weakness, some sort of vulnerability in that software or operating system, so that it gets patched with the latest fix, basically. And then someone will not be able to go and take advantage of that, because you get a lot of folks, they've got nothing better to do with their time. They literally sit probably in their mom's basement, nothing better to do, and they literally go and look for any form of weakness in an operating system or software. And when they find a weakness, they will either go and exploit it themselves, or they will go and sell it to the highest bidder. And they normally do it as quickly as possible, because then it's called a 0-day exploit, which means they just discovered it and they want to go and take advantage of it before someone goes and, well, patches it. So it's always going to be a race, basically. You're going to try and patch as quickly as possible. They're going to try and exploit as quickly as possible. It's a constant race, folks. So far the answer is B. Looking at C, email previewing. No. So if you were to go and preview an email, you would still be triggering whatever malware you had. No, that's not an answer. D, kill process. No, kill process is something you do after something has started, and that might not even solve this problem. So, to kill the process, you would have had to already trigger this malware, which is bad. We don't want to do that, because for all we know, this is ransomware. So, and assuming you have triggered this malware, whatever it might be, you'll find that a lot of malware, you can't just go and kill the process. It's not always that simple. Sometimes you get lucky, but generally, folks, it's not that simple. So, yeah, the answer here remains B, just keeping your stuff up to date, so that if there is a vulnerability, that it gets patched as quickly as possible, so that something or someone cannot take advantage of it. Question 15. One of your friends finds out his password for a social media site has been compromised. Your friend tells you that his email and banking accounts are probably also compromised. So they're not saying it is compromised, they're just saying it's probably also compromised. And they're doing this assumption because they see their social media has been compromised. Which of the following has this friend most likely performed? Why do you think he or she is telling you that they think their email and banking has probably also been compromised? They haven't seen it necessarily yet. All they saw is that their social media is compromised. Someone hacked into their social media. This could be something like a Facebook account, as an example. They see, oh, shucks, someone hacked into my Facebook. That's all they saw. But by seeing just that, they automatically came to the conclusion that their email and banking is probably also hacked. Why would they think that? Now, with that in mind, folks, I had to put it that way for this question to make more sense. With that in mind, looking at answer A, do you think this is social engineering? I would say no. Social engineering is tricking someone into thinking you're something or someone else. So I'm going to send you an email, for example. I'm going to pretend to be your bank. Or I'm going to phone you and I'm going to pretend to be your bank. Or I'm going to come to your office physically and I'm going to say, hey, I am the boss or the manager from this department or that department. I'm going to kind of intimidate you a little bit, and because of fear and intimidation, you might tell me something that you're not supposed to tell me. Meanwhile, I don't even work there. So those are all examples of social engineering. I can even go and add you on Facebook, pretend to be your friend, and over an extended period of time ask you questions, personal questions, which is actually the answers to your security questions. So that's all examples of social engineering. Looking at answer B, and by the way, I don't think the answer is A. Phishing. What's that? Phishing is when I'm trying to trick you to give me something. So I'm going to go and divert you to a website that looks like the original site for something. And I'm going to try and get you to go and type in your login details. But most commonly, phishing is very similar to the social engineering I just mentioned, where I'm going to send you an email. I'm going to ask for your username and password. I'm going to ask for your login details. That's generally phishing. I'm phishing for information, usually login details. So you'll find a lot of platforms like your bank will keep reminding you that they will never ask you for your username and password, at least not via email or phone. They will never ask for that. So if you start getting emails from a platform like your bank and they're asking you for your password and username, yeah, no, it's probably something that's going on there. It's probably phishing. I don't think it's B either, folks. C, password reuse. That could be. If you look at the question, that friend of yours, they only mention that their social media has been compromised. But then they say they think their email and banking is probably also compromised now. Now, if you think about it, if they were using the same password for everything, that would be the answer C here, password reuse. A lot of people, guys, believe it or not, up to 8 out of 10, maybe 9 out of 10 of people use the same password for multiple things. And a lot of you guys that's watching this video right now, probably a lot of you guys are doing that too. You're using the same password for more than one thing. Now, guess what, folks? If you're doing that, you are asking for trouble. For example, Facebook and Gmail, which is something that most of us have, they are extremely easy to hack into. Now, if you're using that same password that you're using for Facebook or Gmail, if you're using that for your banking or your email, anything else like that, all I need to do is just hack something easy, like your Gmail or your Facebook. And if I've hacked that and I get your password for that, and if you're using that same password for something else, now I automatically have access to your other things as well, like your banking or your email. Now, obviously, banking, that's a lot harder to break into. But what if I didn't have to? What if I just had the password because I hacked something else, like your Facebook? So you should never use the same password for multiple things, folks. Unfortunately, there's a drawback to that because you're going to struggle to remember all your passwords. I struggle with that constantly, where I keep locking myself out because I've got so many bloody passwords. But at the end of the day, guys, you're going to be a lot better off for it. It's going to be a lot more secure. You're not going to get hacked. Worst case scenario, you might have to go and reset a password now and then because you forgot your own password. But at least do that. Rather do that than have someone else break into your stuff. So the answer here, folks, is C, because this friend of yours was using the same password for their social media, which they're using for their email and their banking. And since they noticed their social media has been compromised, they automatically made the assumption that, oh, shucks, that means they probably got into my banking and my email too, since I'm using the same password. It's not D. The answer of D, shoulder surfing, that is if someone is nearby and they're trying to see what you're typing on the keyboard or on a screen. This can be an ATM, can be a computer, can be your phone or tablet. The point is, it's normally when someone is standing nearby, near enough to see what you're typing on the keyboard or to see what's on your screen. And then the hopes of, they're probably hoping to get something sensitive, a username or password or whatever. All right, let's move on to question 16, folks. One of your fellow technicians is installing a new wireless network and wants to secure the wireless network to prevent unauthorized access. Which of the following protocols would be the most secure? All right, folks, looking at the list in front of us, this is something you guys will especially see in the A+ scores if you were to go and push your career that far. The first one I'm going to look at is answer C, and there's a reason behind that. I'm going to explain this in a moment. So if you look at answer C, WEP, that is in fact wireless security. It's encryption basically. But that is one of the oldest ones. It's probably the least secure one because, well, it's the oldest. So let's call that number one. WEP, let's just say that's number one for now. Then after that, they came out with WPA. That would be answer A. So if you look at answer A, WPA, that would be, let's call it number two. So answer C is number one. That would be the first one, the oldest one, which is the least secure. If you look at answer A, WPA, that is number two. It's the second oldest. Now, it's a little bit newer than WEP, so it's obviously better. Newer is usually better. So if I had a choice between WEP and WPA, which would be more secure? WPA, because it's newer and better. Now, then after WPA, they came up with WPA2. Much easier to remember that one because it literally just has a 2 after it. So that one came out after WPA. It's newer and even better than WPA. So if I had to choose between WEP, WPA, and WPA2, which would be the most secure? WPA2, folks, because that's the latest one, and the latest is normally the best one. B, answer B has got nothing to do with the question. That is SSID, something you would have heard me mention in my courses. That's literally just the name of the wireless frequency. So if you have a hotspot in your home or your office and you want to go and connect to it, that name that displays for the hotspot, you can actually choose that name. You can make it anything you want. It's normally your company's name or your last name or your first name. You know, you get to choose the name. Now that is the SSID, guys. It's got nothing to do with security. It's literally just the name of the wireless network. So answer A, C, and D, those are security. There's actually a fourth one they've released now, which is not in this answer list. The fourth one is WPA3. And that's even easier to remember because it's just got a 3 to end. That will probably be the most secure if it was in this list, but it's not. So since it's not in this list, with what I just explained to you guys in mind, what will be the most secure out of WEP, WPA, and WPA2? The answer would be D, guys. If I asked you which one is the least secure out of these, that will be answer C, WEP. That's the first one. It's the oldest skadong out of the whole lot of here. Moving on to question 17. For a disaster recovery exercise, a company wants to ensure customer data is recovered before operational data. This is an example of what? Is it redundancy? Redundancy means if something fails, then the service or whatever is not going to be unavailable. So if you have, let's say, users accessing a service on a server, and you go and, for example, create two of the same server, identical servers, they're clones, if you will. And if one server fails or crashes or is down for maintenance, the remaining clone server will be up and running, or at least still be up and running, and the users can still access whatever they want to access on that server, not being the wiser that there's actually, there's an outage of some kind. That will be redundancy. We're not talking about redundancy here. They want to recover. Recover means you had a failure or you're simulating a failure here. Redundancy is to prevent the failure to begin with. So it's not A. Is it B? Replication. That's to make a clone of something, to mirror something. It's a form of backup, but it doesn't meet our needs here. So we want to know, what do we call it if I recover the one kind of data before the other kind of data? That will be answer C, folks. Prioritization. So if I am trying to recover one type of data before I recover other kind of data, because we've had a failure here, or at least we're simulating a failure, and we are trying to recover at this point in time, or at least pretending to go and recover. And if I am prioritizing one type of data over the other, it's called prioritization. Hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm probably butchering it since I'm not actually English. And then the last answer we've got there, fault tolerance, which is pretty much the same thing as redundancy. Fault tolerance is if something fails, the service or server or whatever this is, it's not supposed to be unavailable. So, another example I can give you is to have two hard drives in your server or your computer. They're identical hard drives. They're clones even. And if the hard drive fails, if one of them fails, you don't actually lose any data because, well, they were clones of one another. You literally just take out the failed hard drive, put a new blank one in. It's going to start replicating back to the blank one. And there you go. You've got redundancy again. You've got fault tolerance again. So the answer remains C because we're prioritizing one type of data over another. Question 18. Which of the following is an example of multi-factor authentication? So in case you don't remember what authentication is, that's to prove you are who you claim to be or you are what you claim to be. Now in this instance, we're talking about user identity. So we are trying to prove we are who we claim to be. And this is probably going to be done via username and a password normally, or an email address and a password. But it can be done via many other things as well. It could be a fingerprint. It could be a PIN I've got to type in. I think you guys get the idea. So what is multi-factor authentication? That is if you have to prove your identity, but in more than one way. There's many categories. There's three main ones we normally talk about, the three most common ones. I do want to point out that that's not the only ones though. So you get something which would be a password, a PIN, a phrase. The second category is something you have. That would mean something you've got physically on your person, like a bank card, smart card, a fob. Even your phone counts because the phone normally receives a one-time PIN, OTP in other words, or it's got some sort of acknowledgement you've got to do on some sort of app, like a Microsoft Authenticator app or your banking app. Still something you have. The third category is something that you are, which is normally biometric in nature. This could be a fingerprint, retina scan, voice recognition, face recognition, that kind of stuff. Now, for something to classify as multi-factor, folks, it's got to fall into two of those categories I've just mentioned or more. Has to be two different categories. It's not supposed to be in the same category. So if I ask you for a PIN and a password, I mean, that's two things I'm asking you, yes, but those two things fall in the same category. Both a PIN and a password is something that you know. So it's still the same category. Has to be two different categories. So looking at the four available answers in front of us, folks, which of these has got more than one thing that's being asked, and out of those two things or more that's being asked, that they are in different categories? Looking at answer A, a fingerprint and a retina scan. Is that multi-factor? No. Both of those is something that you are. Both of them is the same category. Answer B, smart card and PIN. Is that two different things? Yes. A smart card is something that you have, and a PIN is something that you know. So far, B is the answer. C says password and PIN. No, that's both something that you know. D says password and passphrase. No, both of those are something that you would know. So the answer is and remains B, folks, because that's two different ways, two different categories. Question 19. Which of the following would be best to keep the data on a laptop safe if the laptop is stolen or lost? Now, which of the following do you guys think would be best for that? Would it be a host-based firewall? That means the firewall is on the actual host itself. So that would mean it would be on the laptop. There's a laptop, there's a firewall installed in that laptop. Would that keep people from getting data off the laptop? No, absolutely not. The firewall is normally if that laptop gets put on a network of some kind to keep other people on the network from, gaining access to your laptop, digitally speaking, via the network. But if someone has physically stolen the laptop, a firewall is not going to do diddly squat, guys. Trust me. So it's definitely not A. B says anti-malware software. That is if you were to get, let's say, some sort of digital infection. Maybe you opened the wrong link in an email or the wrong attachment in an email. Those are just some examples. So it's to prevent a digital infection. So if you are going to get a digital infection, it's going to help take you care of that. It's to help prevent you getting an infection in the first place. But it does nothing in the event of someone stealing your laptop. You need something else for that. It's not going to keep people off your PC. I will still be able to gain access to your PC even if you've got anti-malware. It's not going to do diddly squat. C, strong administrator password. Now that will somewhat keep me off your PC if I've stolen it, but it can be bypassed. But so far that is the best answer. So out of A, B, and C, C is the only plausible one so far, because if I start your laptop after I've started it and you've got a strong administrator password, I would have to know the password or try and crack the password. I wouldn't say it's going to keep me off, but at least it's some level of security. A and B wouldn't do diddly squat if I've stolen your laptop, but C, that is at least a little resistance, a little pushback. Answer D, full disk encryption. Yes, that's what we want. So C is an answer, but D is an even better answer, which is why the question initially said, which of the following would be best? You'll see the word best is in capital. So that means there's more than one answer here that's correct. We want to know which one is more correct. So C is correct, but D is even more correct. D is better. Full disk encryption. Most commonly, we would go and use something called BitLocker to achieve this. And if I steal your laptop or your desktop, it's probably going to be a laptop, I cannot do anything with it. Yes, I might be able to sell the laptop for spares, perhaps. Not the hard drive, because that's going to be encrypted. But other than that, I will never be able to get the data off that hard drive because it has been encrypted, folks. Moving on to question 20. Malware infections are being caused by websites. Which of the following settings will prevent infections caused by internet browsing? Alright, answer A. Delete browsing history on program close. No, guys, deleting your browsing history is not going to help prevent you getting infected. So if you go to a website, let's say this is a pirate website, and you click on the wrong link, open the wrong attachment, or download the wrong thing there, that's gonna infect your PC. You would have already been infected at that point in time. And then essentially, when you close your browser and you go and delete your browser history, that's not going to make any difference whatsoever when it comes to preventing an infection. Never will it. So it's definitely not A. B, notify when downloads are complete. That will not do anything. Besides telling you when the download's complete, it's not going to prohibit you or prevent you from getting an infection. So if you've downloaded something and it tells you, hey, listen, your download is complete. If that's malware, that malware would have already infected your PC. I mean, yes, it would have told you that the download's complete, but it doesn't do anything in a sense of preventing that download from actually infecting your machine. Doesn't do anything with regards to that, so it's not B. C, configure prompting before downloading content. Now that is plausible. So far that might be a possible answer. So maybe I did not intend to download something. I'm just browsing on a website. Suddenly this website is trying to automatically download something to my PC. That actually happens from time to time, folks. So you need to be careful for that. So now before my browser just downloads something or my PC just downloads something, it actually pops up and says, whoa, you are about to download the following. Do you want to continue? Do you want to cancel this download? Block this download? Now that is something we want because that's going to help you prevent infections. Because maybe you did not initiate this download. It started by itself. This website is trying to install malware on your machine. And before it gets to download, it's asking you, do you want to download? And if it's something you're not aware of, you can obviously say, nope, I don't want this. So far, it looks like C. D, turn on private browsing. No, guys, that's got nothing to do with malware infections. So private browsing, yes, that is secure, but not in a sense of infections. Private browsing allows you to browse an encrypted view, port 443, if you guys know what that is. All websites would load an HTTPS, which means you're browsing and encrypted. So if someone's in the middle, a man in the middle attack or whatever, they would not be able to see what you're doing. So if you're logging into a website and you're concerned that someone might be seeing your username and password, someone in the middle, digitally speaking, he or she or it will not be able to see what you're typing in because, well, your browser session is encrypted. So if you're concerned about that kind of security, then yes, private browsing would be the one. But we're not concerned about that. We are concerned in this specific question about infections. Private browsing does not do that, guys. So the answer is and remains C. Question 21. Which of the following storage devices have a spinning disk? Now you guys are going to notice we need to choose two answers now. So I've got 6 answers for you guys to choose from. And I'm looking at these 6. Which two would you guys say has a spinning disk? So they're all storage devices of some kind. You guys will notice that. But out of all of these, which are storage one way or another, which of them have a spinning disk? Looking at answer A, an optical drive, something we did mention before in this video. An optical drive is something we don't really find on machines that commonly anymore, but it does have a spinning disk in it. So if you're lucky enough to still have one of these old machines or one of these old devices or pieces of hardware, you normally would go and insert what we call a DVD or a CD into one of these devices, and it would obviously go and spin. So A is so far looking like a pretty good answer to me. So I'm going to go with A. B, flash drive, or as some of you guys might know it as a memory stick. No, that is static memory, guys. If you go and open it up, you'll find that little device has absolutely no movable parts inside. So I'm going to say B is not an answer here. RAM, nope. That is normally a chip that you would go and insert into your laptop, your desktop, your server. Has no movable parts. It's a form of temporary memory in a computer, also referred to as volatile memory often. There's a reason behind that. But all you need to know for now is it's got no movable parts. No spinning disk, so it's not B, it's not C. Looking at answer D, an HDD. Now that is a normal mechanical hard drive. And the reason I'm saying mechanical is because it in fact does have movable parts. You can probably see where I'm going with this. So if you were to go and open a mechanical hard drive, you'd actually find disks inside, platters if you want to call them that. And these rotate at massively high speeds and uses lasers and magnets and all that. It's got lots of movable parts. So far the answer is also D. Okay, so far I'm going with A and D. Looking at E, ROM. No, guys, that is something you would normally find on your motherboard. It's fixed. It's not moving around. It's got no disk moving around. Looking at F, that's also a hard drive, but that SSD stands for solid state drive, which basically means it has no movable parts, which is why they call it solid state. It's kind of like a flash drive if you think about it. Much smaller in normally physical dimensions compared to a desktop hard drive. And yeah, it's got no movable parts. So the answers is and remains A and D, folks. And in case you were wondering what those devices looks like, here's a picture for you guys. Optical drive on the left and a mechanical hard drive on the right. So that is the two answers. Question 22. Which of the following computer components allows for communication over a computer network? So we're talking about normal network cables. Some of you guys might refer to these cables as LAN cables in some cases. So looking at answer A, NAS. Does that component allow you to communicate over a computer network? No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, you can plug it into a computer network. You know, you can plug it in. It's got a network port, an RJ45 port, if you know what that is. So you can plug a LAN cable into it. It's a form of storage. And if you don't remember what NAS stands for, folks, it's network attached storage. Does not allow you to communicate over the network. It just connects to the network. Looking at answer B, NIC, which stands for Network Interface Card. Now that does seem like it might actually be the answer out of these ones so far. That is a card you would find inside your laptop, your desktop, or your server. It's got an RJ45 port, and it essentially allows your computer to communicate over the network. Kind of gave the answer away now, didn't I? Looking at answer C, CPU, Central Processing Unit. That is normally a chip you would go and insert on the motherboard. It's basically the main brains of your computer, but it's got nothing to do with allowing your computer to communicate over the network. It's not that kind of hardware. So far the answer still is B. Looking at D, RAM, Random Access Memory. That's an actual chip you'll go and insert on the motherboard. This is a form of temporary memory for your computer, and it's also very high speed memory. So this is more memory purposes wise, you know, if you look at RAM. So the answer is and remains NIC. It's an actual card that's normally embedded on most motherboards, but you can go and insert it as an external card if need be. Question 23. A company's team members have both old and new laptops. Which of the following connectors should be available in the conference room to ensure everyone can use the conference room projectors? The reason they're saying that, folks, is because, you know, some people have laptops that's got one kind of port on them. Some people have got laptops that's got a different kind of port on them. And it's not always because of the age of these machines. Sometimes it's just the brand or the model of these machines. Although age does have an influence sometimes. So, looking at the average laptops that the average person would have, what two ports, because we've got to choose two now, what two ports would you guys say we need to have? Or what should we make sure that this room supports? Is it USB? No, guys, that's not something we normally use for video, because a projector is something it projects. It's a form of a monitor, if you want to call it that. It's not really a monitor, but it's for you to see what the heck is going on your computer. Or so that everybody in the room or the boardroom or the conference room can see what the heck is going on your computer. USB is not going to allow you to achieve that goal. B, HDMI. Now that's plausible. HDMI, guys, is a form of video cable. It's high definition, and it actually happens to carry audio as well. Not that that matters, because this question's got nothing to do with audio. This question is specifically about, you know, having a projector project and having it plugged into your laptop. So HDMI would actually achieve that. So far, B looks like a plausible answer. C, Bluetooth. No, that's not normally something we would go and use for video, guys. That's something we would go and use to send a file, perhaps from one machine to another, or to maybe even play audio on some sort of device. But it's not something we generally use to, well, stream video. So if it was a speaker somewhere, we could maybe argue and say, okay, Bluetooth is plausible. But this is not about audio, it's about video. So I'm going to rule out C for now. D, RJ45. Now, guys, that is the network connector for most network cables. If you look at your Cat5, Cat5e, Cat6, Cat6a, Cat7, Cat8, almost all of these cables uses an RJ45 connector. But that's a network cable connector. We're not talking about networks here. We don't want to connect different computers to one another or connect to some sort of network. We want to make sure that a projector can project whatever is going on your laptop. So HDMI is the only one that can achieve that at this point in time. Looking at answer E, VGA. Now guys, that's a very old form of video cable. It's an analog form of video cable, but it will get the job done. And that is actually also what we use very commonly on projectors. Believe it or not, I think most projectors still use VGA. Some of them do support HDMI as well, but I don't always see people using HDMI that often. Instead, the average person would probably still resort to using VGA if they've got that port available on a laptop. Nowadays, more and more folks you're going to see is getting forced over to HDMI because maybe the newer versions of their laptops don't actually support VGA. So they're kind of obligated to go and use HDMI. So the answer so far is B and E. F, RJ11. Now that is a connector that looks at first glance very similar to an RJ45, but if you look at them closely and you hold them next to one another, you'll notice an RJ11 is normally a lot smaller. Only has 4 contact points or copper points, where an RJ45 has got 8. An RJ11 is what we would use for our old conventional telephone lines, folks. POTS. P-O-T-S. Plain old telephone system. So that's what we'd go and use that for. So the answer is and remains B and E, folks. Question 24. One of your users logs into their laptop using their username and a complex password. This is an example of what? Is it A, biometrics? No, I wouldn't say no. Biometrics is, that is one way to prove you are the owner to a device or an account. But biometrics normally involves something you as a human being. This could be fingerprints, retina, voice recognition, face recognition. You'd remember earlier in this video we discussed the categories of authentication you get. Something you know, something you have, and something you are. Biometrics is something that you are. If you look at the actual question, they said the person is using a username and a complex password. That would be something that you know. Completely different category. Looking at answer B, least privilege. So that's a golden rule in IT normally. It's not just in this course. It's not just in CompTIA. It's an actual rule in the IT community. You never give someone or something more privilege than what they need to achieve a task or a goal. So we're not restricting someone's privilege here. Normally that means they can still do certain things, but certain things they're going to be blocked from doing. There's nothing mentioned regarding that in this question. So it's got nothing to do with least privilege. Looking at answer C, multi-factor authentication. So that is when someone needs to prove they are who they claim to be, but they need to do it in more than one category. So you would remember those 3 categories I just mentioned, you guys. So I need to, for example, provide a PIN and a card. The PIN would be something I know. The card would be something I have. So it needs to be 2 forms of authentication in 2 different categories. Now in this question, if you look at the question, they only mention one thing, a username and a password. That's only one form. It's not 2 forms, they're only giving us one thing there. So it's not C. If you look at answer D, single factor authentication. Yes, because they only gave us username and a password. It's not a username and a password plus something else. It's just a username and a password. Hence the answer, single factor authentication. Question 25. One of your system administrators wants to run a script at a certain time every day. Which of the following is the best way to achieve this? Now you'll notice the word best is in capital there. So that generally means there might be more than one answer here that might possibly be correct. Might just be one answer, might be more than one answer. But normally when they say best, there's a good chance that more than one answer here can achieve the goal. And they want to know which of these answers does it best. Okay, so we want us to run a script at a certain time every day. Looking at answer A, Resource Manager. What does that do? Resource Manager, folks, allows you to see the 4 main counters on your machine. CPU, RAM, hard drive, and network. You can go and measure them very accurately, and you can see if something is using a lot of your resources. And if something is using a lot of your resources, let's say something is using up all my RAM, I can see what that something is, and if need be, I can kill that process. But Resource Manager's got nothing to do with, launching a certain script at a certain time of the day. So it cannot achieve that goal. Looking at answer B, Task Scheduler. Now guys, that is something built into both the client and the server operating systems, and even Resource Manager is built into both. Task Scheduler is specifically used to schedule certain things, like scripts. So that actually sounds like it might possibly be the answer. You can use Task Scheduler to go and schedule a script like a PowerShell script or a batch script to go and run at a certain time. You can launch a certain program at a certain time. You can go and display a message at a certain time. The possibilities are actually endless, quite frankly. So far B looks like a juicy answer. C, Set a reminder to run the script. So in other words, you're going to set a reminder for you yourself as a human being, and then you're still going to go and run it as a human being. I wouldn't rule that out. I mean, it is possible to do that way, but that doesn't seem like the most efficient way. So if I had to compare B and C, I would much rather run B. B, I can go and actually automate this script. I can go and schedule it today to run tomorrow, and tomorrow I might be at home, asleep, or watching some soccer match, and this thing is just going to go and execute by itself. It's going to run by itself. C, I mean, that probably could work theoretically, but that's very, very old school and very labor intensive, so that's not the best. So you can see what they mean by the question when I said best way. The word best was in capital, which means there's more than one answer here that could actually achieve this goal. Both B and C can achieve it, but B is the best way so far. D, set the system date and time. No, that's just literally just for you to go and change the system date and time. It's not going to do anything. So the answer is between B and C, B being the better one. Question 26. Which of the following requires the most frequent updates to remain effective? Alright, so looking at our answers, is it an antivirus? So far that seems very plausible. We do want to keep an antivirus very up to date with the latest definition files. Otherwise, there might be some brand spanking new virus that got released yesterday by some person that's got nothing better to do with their time. And if your antivirus is not up to date with the latest definition files, the chances are you might get infected with that malware and it's going to do some serious damage to your machine or your environment. Device drivers. Now, yes, we want to update those, but it's not as important as your antivirus. So from time to time, we want to go and update our drivers to get the latest features and functions and stuff. But if you don't get the latest drivers, it's not going to be the end of the world. Your stuff will still generally work just fine. So it's not B. So far, my answer is A. C, web browser. Yes, we do want to update our browsers, but I'm not going to say it's as important as an antivirus. So updating your browser to the latest version will give you stability, because sometimes there's maybe some sort of glitch or bug in it that causes your browser to crash or something not to work so nicely. So keeping it up to date will give it stability. There may or may not be some sort of security fix or patch, but it's normally not as important as the one on your antivirus. So the answer still remains A. Looking at D, host firewall. Very important to keep that sucker up to date, but generally the host firewall would be your Windows firewall. And that thing does not update as often, and normally it would update via your Windows updates if need be. So the Windows firewall, yes, very important. If you've got a third-party firewall, also very important, but not as important as your antivirus. So I would put antivirus first, then I would put firewall, then I would put web browser, and in the last place, I would put device drivers. So the answer here, folks, is antivirus. You need to always keep your antivirus up to date with the latest definition files. Question 27. How many bits does an IP address version 4 address consist of? Alright, folks, so if you go look at an IP address version 4 address, wow, IP address version 4 address. I should have just said IP version 4 address. Sounds weird when I say it like that. Anyway, point here is, if you go look at it, it consists of 4 octets. There's 4 numbers separated by dots. Each octet, folks, consists of 8 bits. But how many octets is there? There's 4 of them. So it's 8 bits. That means it's 8 ones and zeros. And if there's 4 octets, that would be 8 times 4. So 8 times 4 means you've got 32 bits. So 4 octets, so that's 4 octets consisting of 8 bits. Each octet's got 8 ones and zeros, and in a total, it's going to be a total amount of 32 ones and zeros. So the answer here, folks, is 32. And just for interest's sake, if you go look at an IP version 6 address, that address consists of 128 bits. It's not what the question here is. You absolutely do not need to know that at this point in time. You barely need to know that in A+ territory even. A+ is what follows ITF+. So that is something you would only learn in N+ territory, should you want to go and push your career that far. But for now, IP version 4 only consists of 32 bits, folks. Question 28. Which of the following is performed during Wi-Fi setup on a mobile device? Is it A, configuring Bluetooth pairing settings? No, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth is 2 different forms of wireless connectivity. So Bluetooth, I mean, that is wireless, but it's got nothing to do with Wi-Fi. So no, it's not A. Is it B, configuring email settings? I mean, that is something you would eventually do on a mobile device, but it's got nothing to do with your Wi-Fi setup. Nothing at all. Configuring screen lock settings. That's got to do with security, but it's got nothing to do with your Wi-Fi. So far, I'm inclined to rule out A, B, and C. And by process of elimination, that only leaves us with D, and I haven't even read D yet. D says configuring SSID settings. Yes, that does sound like the answer. So if you don't know what that is, guys, SSID is the name of your wireless network. So if you are setting up a brand new wireless network, or should I call it Wi-Fi or hotspot, in your home environment or your office environment, one of the things we normally do is, besides changing the password, is to change the name of that wireless network. So if it's in your home, you'll probably change the name to your name or your last name or something that will help your friends and family identify that this wireless network is yours. If it's your office environment, you might possibly change it to the name of your company. That's just some ideas as to what you might possibly call it. So the name doesn't matter, it's just so people can identify whose network this is and who it belongs to. So the answer here, folks, is D. Moving on to question 29. One of your technicians is trying to activate the operating system of a user. When doing so, they receive a notification that the software is not genuine. Alright, so it's not a legal copy necessarily. It might have been pirated or cracked or in some sort of way. Which of the following security threats has now occurred? Is it a virus attack? No, they don't mention anything here regarding malware or a virus or an infection. No, it's not a virus attack, folks. Is it B, license theft? Yes, it's license theft. So far, that's my answer. So if you get an error or notification that says this copy of Windows or this copy of your operating system, whatever operating system you're running, or this copy of this software is not legal, it's not genuine, it's not the original, that normally means that person probably tried to pirate it. They went to some sort of pirate website, most likely, or got it from a friend, most likely. They went and installed this, and they probably went and cracked it in some sort of way. That's an example of license theft, because they did not pay for that software. They got a license illegally, or they activated it illegally. Looking at C and D, we know it's not C and D. Phishing, in case you don't know what that is, I think I did mention that earlier in this video, is when you send someone an email pretending to be someone or something they know, and you're trying to basically trick them into giving you sensitive information, like you're using them in a password. So I'm going to send you an email. I'm going to pretend to be some well-known organization you are comfortable with, like your bank. I'm going to pretend to be your bank, and I'm going to ask you for using a password. You're going to give it to me, and then, yeah, I might possibly compromise your bank account. Social engineering, similar to phishing, is when I trick you into doing things. I'm going to add you as a friend, for example, on Facebook. I'm going to pretend to be your friend for a couple of days or weeks or months. And as time goes by, we're going to start chatting. And I'm going to start asking you questions without you noticing. And you're going to answer these questions. And without you noticing, you're actually answering the questions to your security questions on Facebook. So I'm actually now able to go and reset your password using your security questions. That would be an example of social engineering. It can actually be a lot more than that, but that's not what the question here is about. Question 30. One of your users wants to purchase a computer game that requires 8 gigabits of RAM to operate. Which of the following operating system types is required? Is it an 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit, or a 64-bit? Now, guys, at the moment, we don't really get 8 or 16-bit computers. You only get 32 and 64. So the answer is going to be between C or D. Now, 32-bit operating systems is something we do get. A lot of people still are using that, but that's old school. That's legacy. So up until about roughly 2013, 2014, a lot of people, a lot of companies were still using 32-bit operating systems. And then there started being a shift. So I would say the shift started happening around 2012, 2013 in most companies and most users. It does obviously vary from country to country and person to person and company to company, but more or less, let's say 2012, 2013 is when people started shifting over to 64-bit operating systems. That's newer, it's better. So now why is that better? Because, well, it allows you to use more of your hardware, more of your resources. You can think of it as having lanes on a highway. So if you've got a 32-bit operating system, you might have 2 lanes on this freeway / highway. So it can handle an X amount of cars. If you've got a 64-bit operating system, you suddenly have 4 lanes on that freeway / highway. So instead of 2, you've got 4 lanes. You can handle more cars per minute. So 64-bit is better. It's not the only way that it's better in, though. It allows you to use more RAM. A 32-bit operating system, guys, natively has a RAM limit. So if I go and install 8 gigabits of RAM on my machine, you would notice you can only use about 3 or 4 gigs of that. Your system would actually say only 3 gigs or 4 gigs is usable, even though you've got 8 gigs installed. Now that sucks. Can you imagine that? You installed 8 gigs, but you can only use 3 or 4 gigs of the 8 gigs. That sucks. Now, if you have a 64-bit operating system, you'll be able to use all your RAM. So that's actually the answer here, in case you guys haven't figured it out. So D, 64-bit operating system, is going to be your answer because it will allow you to use all of that 8 gigs of RAM for that gaming machine. Alright folks, and before we move on to the next question, it's time for that game I like to play in my videos. Well, not all my videos, but it's found in quite a few of my videos. So if you guys have watched my other videos, you would know what I'm talking about. So normally, somewhere in the video, could be in the middle, could be towards the end, I'm going to give you a hidden word or a hidden phrase. And today's hidden word is bubblegum. So the idea is for you to go to the comment section and make some sort of random phrase, random sentence using the word bubblegum. Or you can just go and type the word on its own, but that's no fun. So if you really want to have fun, make a sentence, a creative sentence using the word bubblegum. If you're wondering, okay, what the heck is the idea? Well, it's for people to just randomly scroll through the comment section that hasn't watched the video yet. They're going to have no idea what's going on. And they'll be like, why are people talking about bubblegum? So it's more for giggles. So for those of you that has obviously watched the video up until this point, you would know why the word bubblegum is in the comment section so much. Now, that does not stop you from using the comment section to ask your normal questions. So if you guys want to go and do your normal comments or whatever, that's perfectly fine. You can still go and do that. The bubblegum comments is just something extra we like to do for giggles. Alright guys, so that's the keyword for today, bubblegum. Moving on to question 31. One of your users at the office has a cellular phone that previously functioned properly. The phone is powered on with a fully charged battery. However, the phone does not have connectivity. Which of the following describes the problem? Alright, okay, so this phone was working just fine previously. It's got a fully charged battery and now for some reason it just doesn't have connectivity. What could be the problem? Is it A, the phone is disconnected from the Wi-Fi? Well, it's plausible, but a phone normally does have access to the mobile network, via its SIM card and all that. So it's very unusual for it to have absolutely no connectivity. So being disconnected from the Wi-Fi, well, that just means you're not going to have free internet and that kinds of stuff. But generally, you should still have some sort of connectivity. B, MAC address is bad. No, that's got nothing to do with this. So the MAC address is something that all devices, not just phones, have. It's like a unique address for that device that cannot be changed. So it cannot be bad. It's physically embedded on the device. C, phone is in airplane mode. Wow, okay, that sounds very plausible so far. So between A and C sounds way more plausible. So for those of you that do not know what airplane mode is, if you put something like a mobile device into airplane mode, it turns off all forms of wireless communication. So it will not be able to communicate via the normal cellular network, via its SIM card. Bluetooth is off, NFC is off, infrared is off if it's got that, Wi-Fi is off, any and all forms of wireless communication and connectivity is completely turned off because there's a myth that supposedly these signals can interfere with a plane's instruments, and well, that's not going to be nice. So that's why it's called airplane mode. You can actually just turn the phone off too. That will probably be a lot easier. So now some people do put a phone into airplane mode for whatever reason, maybe because they were on a plane, and then when they land, they sometimes forget to take it back out of airplane mode, and then they don't understand why the phone is not working. It's because you forgot to take it off. It's because you forgot to put it back into normal mode. So far the answer is C, folks. Looking at answer D, provider is conducting system testing. No. The provider will not go and conduct system testing on your phone. They will go and install annoying updates from time to time, update your firmware from time to time, but they will not go and conduct testing. That is something you would normally see on something like a car tracking device. That they may or may not conduct testing on, but not on your phone. Now moving on to question 32. Which of the following is a common characteristic of open source software? Now, what is open source software? So I think you all probably have an idea what software is, but what does it mean when we say it's open source? That's the key word here. So looking at A, update cycles are dictated by the manufacturer. No, not really. No, that's not it. So with most softwares, yes, the update cycles are dictated by the manufacturer, but that's not a characteristic of open source. Open source, you'll find sometimes never updates. It might update, it might not update, but it's not necessarily dictated by the manufacturer. So I'm going to rule out A for now. B, can only run on certain manufacturer processors. That is normally something you would see with Apple software. You'll find a lot of Apple softwares can sometimes only run on Apple processors. There's nothing mentioned regarding that kind of stuff here, so I'm going to rule out B. C, modifications to core functionalities are made by the manufacturer. Nope, it's not that either, guys. So that leaves us with only D, and that is the answer. Can be fully modified by the user. Now, if you don't know what open source is yet, guys, open source software is normally free software in most cases, and it normally allows you as the user to go and modify it in any way you want. It's completely legal, it's completely allowed. With most softwares, this is normally not allowed. So if you buy that software or whether you obtain it for free, you normally do not have access to the source code, and you normally, even if you do have access to it, you're not allowed to go and tamper with it. It's not allowed. Now, open source, they give you access to the code of the program, and they allow you to change it in any way you see fit. And it's completely allowed, completely legal. So there's actually certain operating systems that's even open source, where they allow you to change that operating system in any way you see fit. So that's generally what we mean when something is open source. We mean it is generally free, but more importantly, you are allowed to alter the code in any way you see fit. So the answer is D, folks. Question 53. Which of the following technologies allows people all over the world to communicate inexpensively? Is it virtualization? Could be, but I'm going to rule it out for now until I see the other answers. So virtualization is a very wide net we're throwing, folks. It can include a lot of things, but generally if we look at ITF plus level of things, virtualization is probably going to entail things like a virtual machine. And a virtual machine is just like a computer, except it's, well, virtual. It doesn't have its own hardware. So I wouldn't say that's necessarily going to make any difference with regards to communicating inexpensively. So I'm going to rule out A for now. B, VoIP. Voice over IP is what VoIP stands for. So that is if you go and use something like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, the old Skype, Hotmail Messenger, Yahoo Messenger. You get so many messengers. So that would be an example of inexpensive communication. You'll find that most phones in offices nowadays are also VoIP. Instead of using the old conventional telephone lines, which we call POTS, P-O-T-S, for plain old telephone system, instead of using those, you'll find that the majority of phones these days in offices, they've got a network cable plugged into them, an Ethernet cable. Some of you guys might know as a LAN cable. So that is how these phones communicate. They communicate via the internet, VoIP, voice over IP. Heck of a lot cheaper. I wouldn't say it's for free, still going to cost you money, but if you go and compare that to the old conventional telephone system, way cheaper. So far the answer is B, folks. Looking at C, SSID, something we did mention once or twice already in this video. So that's normally the name of a wireless network. There's nothing mentioned here about wireless networks, anything regarding that. So no, we're going to completely and totally rule out C. That's just the name of a wireless network. D, kinetics. That is normally something you would find with maybe, let's say, like an Xbox, kinetics. It allows you to go and interact with the gaming system and all that. It's got nothing to do with kinetics, folks. So the answer is and remains B, voice over IP. Question 54. By default, which of the following types of operating systems can automatically detect a user's location while the user is traveling in a bus? Interesting. Is it A, desktop workstation? Desktop workstations can detect where you are, but it's not normally something they would go and do by default. So normally the only times you would see that happen is if you go, for example, to Google and you go and type in the address of a certain place you want to go and visit. then it may or may not detect your location. But you'll see it's normally going to ask you as well, allow this website or allow Google to detect your location, blah, blah, blah. And you've got to normally agree to it first before it will detect your location. So it's not something that happens by default on a desktop workstation. I'm not saying it's impossible, just doesn't happen by default. So I'm going to kind of rule out A for now. Is it B, a server? No, servers don't normally do that. C, virtual server. It's exactly the same as a server. It's just virtual, folks. So there's no real difference between B and C. D, mobile. Oh, yes. So if I had to choose between A and D, D would be my first choice and A would be my second choice. So if most mobile devices, phones and tablets alike, they generally detect your location automatically. You normally need to make sure that it doesn't send that, because it does actually drain your battery life, and in quite a lot of cases it might actually drain your data as well. So if you've got a limited data plan on your phone, you might want to look into that, because it can actually, kill your data in little to no time. Right, moving on. Question 55. One of your users had to replace the hard drive in their computer. The user would like to install the games that came with the computer but were not installed as part of the initial operating system setup wizard. The user can install the games by performing which of the following? Now, to put a little bit more context here, guys, because that on its own is probably going to sound a bit confusing. When you buy yourself a computer, you'll find that sometimes on that brand new computer, it may or may not have some system games. This is something we used to see on the old operating systems. So for any of you guys that used to play on Windows XP and those old operating systems from like a decade or two ago, a lot of those actually came out with built-in games by default. Now, the newer operating systems like Windows 10 and Windows 11, most of them have no games on them, at least not by default that we are aware of. So if you go and start that PC for the first time, you would normally see no games. Now, there are a couple of rare cases where you might actually very well see a couple of built-in games. Comes with Windows. Now, that begs the question, where did they come from if they come with Windows? Why do we only see them on some computers? It's because, folks, it's built in to the operating system and you need to go and turn it on. Not all editions of Windows comes out of that. It's normally the higher end editions, so you're not going to find that on the lower, cheaper editions of Windows. It'll normally be on the higher tier, the more expensive editions of Windows. It's just dormant. It's just turned off. You need to go and turn it on or, install it. So it's a little tick box that needs to be ticked. As soon as you tick it, it's going to install it or uncompress it. And after a quick restart, you're going to see you're going to have those games. So you're going to have to go to your control panel on your machine, if you know what that is. You're going to go to add and remove programs. And then at the top left, you're going to see there's a button that says turn on or off Windows features. And in that little window that's going to open, you'll find that there's often Windows games that can be turned on. So you might now know the answer here based on my explanation. So A, scheduled automatic updates. No, guys, that's not going to help. That's going to update your machine, but it will not install any games. This is just going to go and install security patches and stability patches and things like that. B, enable installed operating system features. Yes, they just need to be turned on. It's there already. It's not something that needs to be downloaded. You don't even need to go and get yourself a DVD or a CD or something. Nope. It's there. You just need to wake it up, guys. It's like a hidden power if you want to think about it that. So far the answer is B. C says update hardware drivers. This has got absolutely nothing to do with drivers, folks. D, reinstall productivity applications. No. Productivity applications, while they are for productivity, like the name suggests, it's got nothing to do with games. The question states, we want to get the games back. How would installing productivity applications give you access to games? It makes no sense, does it? If they said reinstall games, then maybe we could go and argue that question or that answer. But it's not that. So the answer is and remains B, folks. Question 36. Which of the following features of a smartphone controls the screen orientation? Alright, so what they mean by that, and most of you guys would have seen this by now, most phones and tablets, they know which side is up and which side is down, if I have to put this in simple terms. So if you hold the phone the right side up, the screen will rotate. Flip the phone on its side, the screen will rotate. Now you actually have the ability to go and turn this function on or off. Cases I've seen when people want to do that is if they want to lie on their side on the bed, maybe perhaps, then sometimes you don't want the screen to auto rotate because you are actually lying on your side. So you can actually go and turn the feature on and off if you want to. Sometimes it'll just say rotate or screen rotate on the phone. That's what the function will be called. But what is its true name? Its true name, guys, and I'm going to go right into the answer of this one, is gyroscope. So gyroscope is a function or feature which is not just found in phones and tablets, but that's where you'll find it most often. It allows a device, like your mobile device, to detect which side is up and which side is down. It basically uses gravity, for lack of a better description. If you look at answer B here, accelerometer, wow, I can't even pronounce that. That allows a device to detect, well, speed, for lack of a better description. So that one's going to allow your phone or whatever you go and put this into to detect what speed you or this device is moving at. Looking at answer C, I think we all know what a GPS is, global positioning system. So global positioning system is something we find in phones, but obviously not just in phones. It allows you to know where you are, or allows the device to know where it is. You can use this obviously to find your way, to a certain destination if need be. But in a nutshell, it generally uses 3 satellites to triangulate your position and get you where you need to go. Looking at the last answer, NFC, near field communication. Most commonly, most of you guys will probably see this on your bank card. So if you go to a point of sale system, a till or wherever you would normally pay for your purchase, normally there the person is going to ask you to make payment, and a lot of us these days will take out our bank card and you'll bring it near that speed point or pay point. And as soon as you bring it near that, which a lot of us just call tap and go, you're going to find that the transaction is actually going to go through. That's because of something called NFC. Now, this function is built into most phones nowadays as well. So a lot of phones these days, if you've got a banking app installed in your phone, you can actually go and choose a digital banking card, and you can actually bring your phone instead of the card near this PayPoint machine, and the transaction will still go through just like normal. You'll find more and more other weird devices nowadays also has NFC. Some people will have a fancy watch. I've seen some people with fancy rings on their fingers. Either way, it's NFC. You bring that weird device near the speed point and the transaction is going to go through. Anyway, guys, so getting back to the answer here is a gyroscope. Question 57. One of your user's operating system is configured to automatically update as updates are released. Now, that's normally the default setting, mind you. However, last week's updates failed to download. Which of the following should you do first to install the updates? You'll notice the word first, like usual, is in big capital letters, which draws attention to the fact that there might be more than one answer here that's possibly correct. We want to know which one should you do first. Alright, so in conclusion, what happened? The updates for last week failed to download. Normally this happens automatically. Downloads the updates automatically, probably installs them automatically, and there you go. You just go on with your day. However, last week, that was not the case. They failed to download. Now what? Well, is it A, run a virus scan to remove viruses? No, I mean, obviously that's good to go and do that, but that's not going to be the first action you should do here. They're mentioning here that our updates failed to download. So what the heck does scanning for viruses got to do with, getting those updates? Is it B, change the automatic update schedule? Now, in the foreseeable future that might help, but it does not help us with our immediate issue. Our immediate issue is there's an update we did not get. Last week's update was not downloaded. Changing the update schedule is not going to change it that much. I mean, one thing you could go and do is you can maybe go and change the schedule so that it goes and updates again today, or at least tries to do it today, but it doesn't mean it's going to solve that problem. So B, plausible. B is plausible. Looking at C, manually download the updates. Now that sounds even more plausible than B to me. So if you go to a search engine of your choice, like Google, you can actually go and download the latest definition files for your antivirus or whatever it is, your firewall, your operating system. So you can actually go and manually download these updates. Now, considering that they're talking about operating system updates, you would normally most likely be able to go to your control panel. Some people call it the settings app. The settings app is the newer version of the control panel. You can go in there, you just click on download updates, and it will manually download the updates. That's another way to go and do it. So the answer so far is C, folks. D, reinstall the operating system. That is very drastic. I mean, reinstalling the operating system, yes, sure, it's probably going to go and download updates as well after it's installed, but that's very, very drastic. So that would be your last resort. So the best answer here, folks, remains C. Manually go and download these updates. Question 58. Which of the following printer types uses a powder-based consumable with a lower cost per page compared to other printers? Alright, so looking at the first one, A. Does that use a powder-based consumable? The ink, in other words. No, it does not. An inkjet printer uses a liquid-based ink. B. Laser. Does that use powder-based? Yes, it uses something called toner. So the cartridges contain a powder-based ink, which is toner. Now, the printer itself normally costs a little bit more than an inkjet, pretty much double the price of an inkjet printer. But in general, over time, you're going to find that the laser printer actually works out way cheaper because the consumables work out way cheaper. You're going to get way further of that ink. And in general, they just cost less. So the answer is B, but looking at the other ones, C, dot matrix. A dot matrix printer, folks, uses something called a ribbon. So it's a special kind of paper. Looks like a carbon kind of paper. It's normally black or purple. It's got pins that will strike this carbon paper, and it's going to go and copycat or replicate that symbol it got, that the paper got struck with onto another piece of paper. So in short, it uses a ribbon. D, a thermal printer. This is the kind of printer you'll find at most tills or, point of sale systems, So when you go and purchase something and they give you a slip of some kind or an invoice, it's in most cases printed by a thermal printer. You'll notice because the ink on that slip is normally going to fade. As soon as it's exposed to heat or light, you're going to find it's going to get whiter and whiter to a point after a couple of days or weeks or so, you're going to see nothing. Which is quite frustrating if you need this for warranty or guarantee purposes or just for a refund or your taxes even in some cases. So a thermal printer uses a wax-based kind of ink. So the only one out of these four that uses a powder-based ink, more specifically toner, is laser, folks. Question 59. Which of the following could be described as both an input and an output device? So an input device, folks, is a device that'll input information of some kind into your computer. This can be audio, can be video, can be text-based. An output device is something that's going to, output something. This could be also audio, text-based, all that kind of stuff. So it could be a printer if you think about it. So looking at A, is that an input, an output, or both? We're looking for something that's both. A microphone is an input device, guys. So it detects audio and it's going to input that into the machine. B, could that be both input and output? It could be. If it was just a printer, it would be just an output device. If it was just a scanner, it would be just an input device. But the fact that they said multifunction printer means it's a scanner and a printer. So far, B sounds like the answer here, folks. It's going to be an input device because it has a scanner built into it. It's going to be an output device because it's got a printer. Now, looking at answer C, it's just a scanner. So that is just an input device. Looking at answer D, flat screen monitor. A monitor or any form of screen, folks, is an output device. It displays what's going on the machine. So A is input, C is input, D is output, and B is input and output. So the only answer here, folks, is B. Question 40. Which of the following hardware components is used to store data? Choose free. Now, there's a very long list of answers I've given you guys, and you need to choose free from this list, folks. So which free on this list can be used to store data? Now, keep in mind, we're not saying temporarily or permanently. We just want to know which free of these devices basically has the ability to store data. Whether it be permanent or temporary, doesn't matter. Okay, so with that in mind, is it A, CPU? No. The central processing unit is essentially the main brain of a computer that does calculations, not used to store data. If they said CPU cache, now that would have been a different story. That would be a temporary built-in memory inside of the CPU. But A specifically just says CPU, so it's just the chip. It's just the calculation part of it. So it's not A. Is it B? Random access memory. Yes, that is temporary memory. It might be temporary, but it's still memory that's got the ability to store data. So far, B is one of our answers. Is it C? Motherboard. No. On its own, the motherboard does not have the ability to go and store data. Unless we're talking about the BIOS on the motherboard. So if you look at something like the BIOS or a TPM chip, but that's not what they're mentioning here. They're specifically just saying, in general, the motherboard. No, does not have the ability to go and store data. The main thing we use it for is just to go and plug in all kinds of other components like the CPU, the RAM, and so on and so forth. So it's not C. D, SSD, solid state drive. That's a type of hard drive that's got no movable parts, something we mentioned earlier in this video. So that's permanent storage. The fact is, it's still storage and it's able to store data, so that's one of our answers. So far, the answers is B and D. We need to look for a third one though, so moving on. E, GPU, graphical processing unit. So that is the chip on your graphics card that does processing, just like the CPU, except this one is on the graphics card, and very often you'll find it's actually got more capability than the CPU. But it does not have the ability to go and store data on its own, unless we're talking about the memory on the graphics card. So if I really had to go and choose something on this list, I would have chosen GPU, I suppose. But they're not specifically talking about the memory on the GPU. Is it F? PSU, power supply unit. No, guys, that's the box inside your computer that provides power, or should I say electricity, to your various components. Not F. Is it G? Network interface card. No, that's a piece of hardware that connects your machine to a network or gives your machine the ability to connect to a network and communicate over a network. So it's not G. So by process of elimination, that only leaves us with H, and H is an HDD, which is a normal mechanical hard drive, also used to store data. So the answer here, folks, is B, D, and H. Question 41. One of your users is purchasing a new graphics card for a PC. Which of the following should the user check to ensure there will be enough electricity for the graphics card to function properly? Alright, so based on the previous question, which is question 40, you should kind of sort of already have an idea what the answer here is and what these components do. So out of these four components, folks, which one has got to do with power? Which one provides power to your various components like the graphics card? So hopefully you guys paid attention in question 40. So answer A, power supply unit. I think you guys know the answer now. The power supply unit, guys, is that box inside your computer box that's got various cables, and these cables plug into things like your motherboard, your graphics card, and all kinds of appliances, and they basically provide power to that. So the answer here is PSU. B, being a graphical user interface. That's just a graphical interface on a machine. It allows you to interact with the machine more user-friendly wise. So it's got nothing to do with this question. C, CPU, that's just the brains of the computer. It's got nothing to do with providing electricity. D, solid state drive, that's used to store information. It's got nothing to do with providing electricity. So the only component here that actually provides power, folks, is the power supply unit. The answer is A. Question 42. Which of the following are examples of keyboard connectors? And we've got to choose two again. So there's 6 for us to choose from. Out of these 6 answers, folks, which could be used for keyboard connectors? Now keep in mind, they don't say whether this is a new keyboard or an old keyboard. It could be either or. So answer A, RJ45. Folks, that's a connector we normally use for network cables, for Cat5, Cat6, Cat7 and 8, so on and so forth. That's a network cable connector. It's got nothing to do with keyboards. B, USB. Yes, most of the modern keyboards these days use a USB connector. It doesn't matter whether your keyboard's got a cable, that cable will probably be USB, or whether it's wireless, because that wireless transceiver, it's also USB usually. So one of the answers I think is going to be B. Now what is the second answer? Is it C, RJ11? No. Like we said earlier in this video, RJ11 is something we use for telephone cables. That will be a connector we use on the old POTS lines, POTS, for plain old telephone system. It's got nothing to do with keyboards. Is it D, PS2? Yes. So that is a connector we used to use on the old keyboards and mice. So the old keyboards used to have a purple PS2 connector, and the old mice used to have a green PS2 connector. Not something you'll find anymore unless you've got a very old PC and a very old mouse and keyboard. Generally, those are kind of sort of extinct now. Suppose you can call those legacy. So that is our second connector. So the answers is B and D. But just in case you don't know, VGA is an old analog type of connector we use for video. Something we mentioned way earlier in this video when we discussed projectors. F is one of many type of connectors you get for fiber optic cable. So that's for straight tip. You don't need to know what the abbreviation stands for. But ST is one of the many kinds of fiber cable connectors you get, folks. So the answers is and remains B and D. Question 43. Which of the following is the function of a CPU? So what does the central processing unit in a computer do, folks? Does it provide storage location for files? No. Does not store data. We literally established that like 2-3 questions ago. The CPU cannot be used to store information unless we're specifically referring to the CPU cache, which is built into the CPU. There's no mention of CPU cache here. The CPU's main purpose is not to go and store information. Is it B? Supplies electricity for the components? Nope. That would be the purpose of a PSU, a power supply unit. A, that would be something like a hard drive. B, that would be something like a power supply. C, performs data computation. Yes, the processing unit is used to go and calculate and compute information. So far the answer seems like it might be C. D, used to connect to networks. No, that is the purpose of an NIC, folks, network interface card. So A, that description sounds like a hard drive. B, that description sounds like a power supply unit. C sounds like a CPU, so that's our answer here. And D sounds like a network card. So the answer is C, folks. Question 44. One of your users is busy browsing the internet when suddenly a message pops up on their screen demanding payment to avoid the system being disabled. Which of the following malwares has the user most likely been infected with? Alright, so we know it's a malware, but what kind of malware is this? What kind of malware can you guys think of that would demand that you make a payment to basically avoid the system being disabled? What does that sound like? Is it A, spyware? No, folks. Spyware does not disable your machine. It's generally used just to spy on people to see what they're doing. You can go to record their keystrokes. You can see what they're doing live on the machine, but it does not disable a machine and it does not demand payment. Is it B, ransomware? Yes, that sounds like the answer. Ransomware normally disables the machine by encrypting everything on the machine, and normally you would see a pop-up popping up on a screen demanding payment, and most often this will be in the form of some sort of cryptocurrency, the main one being Bitcoin. So the answer here is B, folks. C, a virus, is normally a piece of code with malicious intent, and its intent is just to, well, do some harm on the machine, but it does not necessarily disable the machine, it just does harm on the machine, and viruses don't normally demand some sort of payment. Adware is just very annoying stuff on a machine. This will be ads and stuff, so it'll be a pop-up, but it does not disable the machine, unless you consider a lot of pop-ups disabling your machine. So it's normally just all kinds of pop-ups popping up annoyingly on the machine, ads and that kind of stuff. Hence the name adware, because it's all kinds of spam ads that's going to be popping up on your machine. So the answer is B, folks. Question 45. One of your employees forgot their laptop in a public coffee shop. The employee is worried about unauthorized access to that laptop. Which of the following would best protect against data theft in this instance? Alright, so they're not too concerned about getting the laptop back itself because you can always replace the laptop. This employee is concerned about the data on that laptop getting into the wrong hands. What would help with that data situation? Preventing the data from getting into the wrong hands. A, a username and a password. So, yeah, that'll help keep them off, but that can be cracked. So, A is a possible answer. I'm going to say it's plausible for now. You can see that the word best is in capital letters there again, which means there's more than one answer here, more than likely. We want to establish which one is the best out of all of these answers. So far, A is not a bad answer, but I don't think that's the best answer. B, full disk encryption. Yes, that's also an answer, and so far B is better than A. B is normally something like BitLocker, It's going to encrypt the whole freaking hard drive, which completely renders that data useless unless you are the original owner. If it's just using a password, it'll temporarily keep them off your machine, but that can very easily be cracked, guys. So B is so far the answer. Is it C, a cable lock? No. A cable lock is a form of physical security that will help prevent the laptop from getting stolen in the first place. But should it get stolen, it's not going to prevent unauthorized people from accessing your data. It's got no way of blocking people from accessing your data. So C is not an answer, not at all. Is it D, security software? No, guys. Once your laptop is stolen, that security software is not going to help. Security software is to prevent the machine from getting infected. Is to prevent someone from breaking into that machine via some network, perhaps. But if they have the actual device itself, security software is not going to mean diddly squat. It's not going to make any difference. So C and D is completely out. The only possible answers here is A and B, of which B is the better one. So the answer is B, folks. Question 46. Which of the following is an example of ransomware? There we go with the ransomware again. So based on what we discussed in the previous question, I hope you'll be able to identify which one of these is potentially ransomware. So let's look at answer A. A user is asked to pay a fee for a password to unlock their files. Guys, so far that's very plausible. So normally with ransomware, like we mentioned in one of the previous questions, it's going to be a pop-up that's going to pop up on your screen. Normally everything's going to be encrypted in that machine. And in that pop-up, it's going to demand a ransom, in other words, a payment, in a form of cryptocurrency, which will most likely be Bitcoin. Once you pay the ransom, you've got no real guarantee that they're going to release your data. But if you are one of the lucky ones, they will normally give you some sort of software that's going to unencrypt all your files, or they'll give you a password that's going to unencrypt all your files. That's normally one of the two that's going to happen. I'm not going to say that it's normally going to be a password. It's just one of the options I've seen in my IT career. So A is plausible. Looking at B, a user receives an email demanding payment for a trial application that has stopped working. No, that's not ransomware, guys. That's normally, what do you call that? Shareware. So you get freeware and you get shareware. Freeware is when you have a program that just works permanently, completely for free. Doesn't cost you a cent, works permanently, it's completely for free. Shareware normally allows you to use this program, whatever it is, for a limited period. It might be for a week, it might be for 30 days, or there's not a time period associated, but after you've used it a certain amount of times, the program will lock itself or it'll go into reduced functionality mode. So that's a trial, but it's also called shareware, but it's not ransomware. Looking at answer C, a user opens an internet browser and is taken to a site that is not the normal homepage. Now that is not ransomware, guys. That could potentially be a Trojan horse. Might be, might not be. It could potentially be adware. Can be a lot of things. This can be a phishing site as well. So it might be a phishing site, could be an adware, could be Trojan horse. The most likely culprit here is it is a phishing site that's trying to get you to, well, log into some sort of site which is not the original one. I would say this is probably adware. D. A user is asked to open an attachment that verifies the price of an item that was not ordered. So apparently, supposedly, you have an attachment that wants to verify the price of some item that you never actually ordered. Guys, that could potentially be malware. It could be ransomware, but it's very unlikely. So normally what that is, it's a form of phishing. It is, but it's not. So I've seen this many times with my clients. Normally when they open this attachment or they click on some sort of link, that account or that machine has now been compromised and they've got access to that account. So they normally try and trick you into opening this attachment, and as soon as you do that, they've got access to your machine and they've just compromised your account. So it's kind of sort of a form of social engineering / phishing. We're trying to trick you into opening this attachment. We normally want to use the scaring factor, the fear factor, or the curiosity factor. In this case, it might be the curiosity factor, because now you're wondering, what price is this now? What attachment is this now? And then because of your curiosity, you're going to go and open it, and then boom, your account's been compromised. So the only answer here, folks, is A. It's asking you for a password in exchange to unlock your files. Or should I say, unencrypt your files. Question 47. One of your technicians is configuring a new wireless router, or should I say router, depends on the country you're in. Different countries pronounce that differently. So some countries will call it a router and some will call it a router. So one of your technicians is configuring a new router. Which of the following should be done to ensure no unauthorized changes are made on this router? Is it A, change the router's physical location? No, guys. Changing the physical location is not going to stop me from wirelessly connecting to that device. I normally don't need to see it. I normally don't need to touch it. All I need to do is to be able to connect to it wirelessly, and I can do that if I'm within range. So A is not going to do diddly squat. Is it B, change the SSID? No, guys. That is just the name of the hotspot or the wireless network. So changing the name is not going to make any difference. I'm going to see, oh yeah, you changed the name, but that does not stop me from logging in or hacking into it and locking you out or making changes. So B, not going to do diddly squat. C, change the administrator password. Yes. Most network equipment like routers and access points and whatever, they all have a standard default password from the factory, and a lot of technicians like me and you would normally know what this default password is. So it's always best practice to change that password. That should literally be one of the very first things you do, is to change that password, because people probably know what the default password is, which means they can log in and make all kinds of unauthorized changes. So far the answer is C. D, change the router's IP address. Also something you should normally go and do, but I would not say that's going to prevent me from logging into it and making unauthorized changes. It's very quick and very easy for me to find that new IP address. The only reason why you want to go and change the IP address is to avoid this new device from conflicting with any other current device on the network, or any other new potential device in the foreseeable future from conflicting with this device. So it's to avoid IP address conflict on the network. It's not to prevent unauthorized access. So the answer is and remains C, folks. Question 48. Which of the following would best be described as password best practices? So if we look at all of these answers, we've got to choose 3 now, folks. You can see there it says we need to choose 3. Out of these 6 answers, which of these 6 are things we should normally go and do with regards to passwords? Best practices, as they call them. Is it A, writing down difficult passwords? No, I'm going to rule it out. Normally, we want to try and avoid having people write down passwords, because someone can easily find that now. It's very easy to go to someone's desk and see, oh, there's a sticky note. Oh, there's a piece of paper with a password on it. That's very bad. You do not want to do that. You want to try and avoid people writing down passwords. So A is out. Is it B, use special characters? So far, I'm inclined to say that's one of the answers. You should really try to not just use words, guys. Use uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols. And these symbols are special characters. This could be the @ sign, could be the hash sign, which some people call pound, could be the $sign. The point is you need to use special characters, because that makes it much harder to guess the password or crack the password. So far, B is one of the answers, I think. C, keeping default passwords. No. I literally just said in the previous question of that wireless router, you should change the default password, because most IT people will know what these default passwords are. You're leaving yourself wide open. So C is completely out. So I'm going to rule out A and C here. Is it D, limiting password reuse? Yes, that's good. So what I mean by that, and we did mention this way in the beginning of this video, if someone uses a password for more than one thing, the same password for more than one thing, that's bad. Because as soon as I crack or break into one of those platforms of yours that uses that password, I automatically have access to a lot of other of your platforms, because they all use the same password. So you normally want to try and limit people from using the same password on multiple platforms. So D is a very good answer so far. So I'm inclined to say B and D are the answers. E, use of long passwords. That also sounds good. The longer the password, the harder it is to crack, the longer it takes to crack. And this applies to both humans and special software, folks. So far the answer is B, D, and E. F, sharing passwords with a trusted source. No, guys, you should try and avoid sharing a password. You normally don't want to share your password with anyone or anything unless you absolutely must. So unless you absolutely have no choice about it, you don't do it. So the answer here is and remains B, D, and E, folks. Question 49. One of your users, Steve, receives a call asking for his password to troubleshoot a problem. Supposedly, wink wink, nudge nudge. Which of the following describes this type of security threat? So now if you or this person called Steve receives a call, and now this call or this person on the call says, hey, we need your password to troubleshoot an issue on your machine. I mean, heck, guys, this could be an issue that you're completely unaware of even. You're like, huh? What issue are you talking about? But now this person on the phone tells you, nope, they need your password because there's some sort of issue apparently on your machine they want to troubleshoot. What kind of threat is that? Is it spam? No. Spam is normally unwanted stuff. Unwanted email, unwanted phone calls, SMSs, WhatsApps, that kind of stuff. So it's not spam. Is it B? Physical security threat? No, it's not a physical security threat. The person is calling you for crying out loud. It's not physical. Is it C? Social engineering? Could be, because they're calling you pretending to be someone, and they are apparently saying that there's some sort of issue on your machine. So they're trying to intimidate you, scare you, or trick you into doing something you're not supposed to do. So it could be social engineering. That's only when I trick you into doing something. So C is plausible. D, dumpster diving. Nope, it's not dumpster diving. So dumpster diving is when I go through your trash. Could be a small bin beneath your desk. Could be the big bins outside, wherever. I'm going through your trash in the hopes of getting something sensitive. Something like a password. Here, I'm not going through your trash in this question. In this scenario, in this question, they're calling you and trying to trick you into giving the password. That is social engineering, folks. The answer is C. Question 50. What type of malware has an embedded keylogger to capture all keystrokes and steal your login details? I accidentally gave the answer to this one a couple of questions ago. So is it A, spyware? Yes, that's the answer. Spyware, folks, is used to see what people are doing. You get many kinds of spyware, believe it or not. You get subcategories, you get sub-subcategories. One of the subcategories of spyware you get is keyloggers. And with keyloggers, you get different kinds. So a keylogger, in a nutshell, is used to record users' keystrokes. I can see what you're typing on the keyboard. So, and this is normally used to try and capture your username and password to something, banking details, that kind of stuff. So the answer here is A, spyware. But in case you don't know what the other ones are, they were mentioned in this video already. They were discussed already. So B is ransomware, folks. That is some sort of malware you're going to get on your machine. It encrypts everything on the machine. It's going to pop up with a little message asking you for a ransom, normally in the form of cryptocurrency. And then when you pay the ransom, you may or may not get the password to unlock your data, or you may or may not get some software to unlock your data. So that's ransomware. Adware is normally very annoying stuff on your machine. It's just going to be all kinds of inappropriate, annoying ads popping up on your machine. That's basically what it is. Phishing is when you receive something like an email. Could be an email, and in this email, I'm pretending to be some sort of well-known person or organization, and I'm trying to get you to give me your username and password. That's phishing. Very similar to social engineering, quite frankly. Moving on to question 51. Which one of the following cloud computing concepts allows scalable services to be provided to the client? Alright, so guys, the cloud is when you put something somewhere else on someone else's property. That's basically what the cloud is in a nutshell, in case you guys don't know. If you followed the course, which had 5 videos or 5 modules, you would know what the cloud is. So as soon as I have something on someone else's property, like Microsoft, for example, and render that back to me as a service, let's say via the internet, that's cloud, folks. Now, which one of the following cloud computing concepts allows scalable services? Is it on demand? No, that is a feature of cloud, but on demand means you can get something very quickly and very easily. Unlike on-premises, we've got to go and order it first or build it first, all that. On-premises stuff just takes flipping forever. In the cloud, it's nearly instantaneous, very quick, very easy, and very cheap. Wow, I sound like I'm selling you guys something. I swear I'm not selling you guys something. Is it B, metered? No. Metered means you only pay for what you use. So in the cloud, they've got a per minute billing system. So if you, for example, have a virtual machine, a virtual computer running in the cloud, and you fire it up, only while it's running do you pay for it per minute. As soon as you turn it off, you don't pay for it. And if you go and add more resources to that component, then you pay more. If you take some of the resources out, you pay less. So it's not A, it's not B. Rapid elasticity. Yes, that's the rubber band we talk about. So in a cloud, you're able to scale up and down very, very quickly. So if you don't know what scalable means, folks, if you have a computer on premises or a server on premises, if I add more resources to that server, that computer, let's say hard drive space or more RAM, that's scaling. That's scaling up. Scaling up is when you add resources to that computer or server. Scaling out is when I add more computers or servers in general, like a clone server. So if I have one server and I add another identical server that does the exact same thing, that would also be scaling, but that's scaling out, sideways. If you go and improve your one and only existing server with more RAM or hard drive space, that will be scaling up. Now this can both be done in the cloud as well, but in the cloud it's very quick, very easy, and very cheap and affordable. In the cloud you can also go and scale back down. Very cheap, quick, easily, and affordable, and this can all happen automatically, which is what this concept is about. Rapid elasticity means your cloud provider, like Microsoft or Amazon or whoever you want to go and use, they will automatically do this on your behalf. So if they see you need more resources, they can automatically give it to you. Very quick, very easily. If they see you no longer need it, they'll take it away. Because if they take it away, you pay less. I mean, who doesn't want that? So the answer here, folks, is actually in fact C. D, which is resource pooling, is a concept we talk about in the cloud where you actually share servers. Yeah? So whatever you put in the cloud, it's on a server someplace, let's say Microsoft servers, but that server on which your stuff resides, there's actually other company stuff or other people's stuff on that very same server. You're sharing a server. That's called resource pooling. Now, if you're concerned about data leakage or security, you don't have to fear. They've got security that looks like it's straight out of NASA. And if you're still paranoid like my wife, then you can just go and throw more money at the problem and you can go get yourself a dedicated server. Nothing is impossible if you've got enough money to throw at the problem. So that's resource pooling, folks. So the answer here is rapid elasticity. That's going to give you the ability to go and scale up and down or back in and out or whichever very quickly and very easily. Question 52. One of your end users has signed up to use a web-based calendar application. Which of the following solutions has your user just purchased? So this is a cloud kind of question in case you guys don't know. So with regards to the cloud, you get different kinds of cloud. You get private cloud, hybrid cloud, public cloud, and in each of those three I just mentioned, those are three different categories, you get subcategories. And once again, you get subcategories. Yep, you get subcategories, guys. So a web-based calendar, that means this program is installed somewhere else, it's running somewhere else, and it's simply displaying to you or the user via the internet, possibly via a browser. What do we call that type of cloud? Is it A, IaaS? That's infrastructure as a service. So that's the type of cloud where you've got the most control. You've got full control. It's way more than just a web application, folks. So this could be a whole bloody server in the cloud for all we know. And you've got full control over the whole server, not just an application. So it's not A, guys. Is it B, platform as a service? So PaaS is platform as a service. You've got a little bit less control than infrastructure as a service. So platform as a service, this could be a whole Active Directory in the cloud. So you don't have access to the actual server itself, but you still have access to a large portion of the platform. It's not B, though. Is it C, software as a service? SaaS is software as a service. This is when you've got software installed in the cloud, running somewhere else, it's installed somewhere else, and it's simply displayed to you or the user as a service of some kind, and you pay a monthly fee for that. And doesn't that just sound like what we described earlier in the question? Yes, because C is in fact the answer, guys. And then if you look at answer D, we know it's not answer D because the answer is C. Desktop as a service. DaaS. That's got nothing to do with this one. So desktop as a service is a cloud computing offering that enables businesses to deliver cloud-hosted virtual desktops to any device. From anywhere, folks. So the answer is and remains C. Question 53. You need to block clear text web browsing on a computer. Which of the following ports do you need to block? Now, if you don't know what they mean by clear text, that means when you or the user are web browsing or doing your normal web browsing, if there's someone in the middle that's intercepting this communication, they will be able to see what you're doing and where you are browsing on the internet. So if you are going to go and do encrypted web browsing, then they would not be able to see what you're doing. But clear text, that's the unsecure version. So with regards to blocking normal clear text web browsing, What port does normal web browsing use on your firewall or your computers and stuff? Is it port 23? No, folks, that's telnet. That's to go and remotely connect to something in a console view. So it's not going to be in a graphical interface, it's going to be a console view of some kind. Most often you'll find we'll use something called PuTTY to do that. So 23 is telnet, it's not web browsing. Is it port 25? No. 25 is SMTP. That's to send email. Or at least that's the old school way of doing emails. In the old days, 20, 30 years ago, when most of us used to use the old email services, we used to use port 25 to send email. And it's a different one that's used for receiving email. We still use them till this day, but nowadays we use more things like Gmail and Outlook and Office 365, and those don't actually use port 25. They use different port numbers. Port 53, what's that? That's DNS, converting IPs to names and names to IPs in a nutshell. So if you're going to go and do web browsing, and you, for example, type in www.youtube.com, how do you think your computer knows what that is or where that is? The DNS tells your computer. So your machine, in a fraction of a second, in the blink of an eye, asks the DNS, what is this? Where is this? And the DNS will tell your computer how and where to get to that. Port 80, that's for HTTPS, which is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. In other words, normal clear text web browsing. Well, folks, I think we found our answer. The answer is in fact D, port 80. But just in case you're curious what the other ones are, 110 is POP3. POP3 is the old school way of receiving email. F, which is 443, is encrypted web browsing. That will be HTTPS, not HTTP. So port 80 is HTTP, which is clear text web browsing, and 443 is HTTPS. The S stands for secure, which means you're browsing in an encrypted view. G, the last one, 3389, that's RDP, remote desktop protocols. If you want to go and do remote desktop from one device to another to control it remotely, that would be port 3389, folks. So the answer is and remains port 80. Question 54. You have been tasked with getting a RAID 1 solution in place. What is the minimum amount of hard drives required, and what benefit does the solution provide? Now guys, just a quick recap in case you don't remember from the course, or maybe you did not watch my course videos. For this course or this exam, you just need to know RAID 0, RAID 1, and RAID 5. You get many kinds of RAIDs, but those are the only three you need to know for this course and for this exam. Now, each of these RAIDs I've just mentioned have their own benefits and their own drawbacks. Each of these RAIDs has a minimum amount of hard drives required, and each of these RAIDs will give you some sort of, some benefit. So RAID 1, what does RAID 1 do, and what benefits does it provide? Now RAID 0 and 1, both of them, guys, requires a minimum of 2 hard drives. So RAID 0 requires minimum 2 hard drives, RAID 1 requires minimum 2 hard drives, and RAID 5 requires a minimum of 3 hard drives. Now this question is about RAID 1, and since I've just mentioned that RAID 1 requires a minimum of 2 hard drives, we already know the answer is going to be between C and D. If you look at all the answers below, you'll see the first two, A and B, says a minimum of 1 hard drive is required. So we know it's not 1, we need 2 hard drives. C and D says a minimum of 2 hard drives, and E and F says a minimum of 3 hard drives. So this was a RAID 5 question, then it might have been E or F the answer. But considering this is RAID 1, and we know RAID 1 needs a minimum of 2 hard drives, it's going to be between C and D. Alright, so then say, okay, what's the minimum amount of hard drives required? That's what the question says. We know it's 2. And what benefit does RAID 1 give? So RAID 0, folks, gives you performance, gives you speed. RAID 1 gives you redundancy, reliability, fault tolerance, all those fancy words. And RAID 5 gives you speed and redundancy and parity bit. Yep. So looking at C and D, which one of those is going to give us redundancy? That will be D. So if you look at answer to C there, it says minimum 2 hard drives and it gives you performance. That would have been the answer to RAID 0 if this was about RAID 0. So C would have been the answer to RAID 0. D is the answer to RAID 1. And RAID 5, I don't really see an answer here for RAID 5. I mean, yes, we need a minimum of 3 hard drives for RAID 5. But RAID 5 gives you performance, redundancy, and parity bit. And there's no such answer here that gives us all of that. So there's actually not an answer that's correct here for 8.5. So the answer is and remains D, folks. Question 55. Which one of the following printers uses toner to print? Now, I did give you guys this answer earlier in this video, so hopefully you paid attention. Hopefully you remember. So earlier, we were asked what kind of printer uses a powder-based kind of ink. Does anyone remember what that answer was? If you do, that's the same answer here. So what printer here uses toner? Toner is powder. That will be a laser printer, folks. So A, being dot matrix, uses a ribbon. B, thermal, uses wax kind of ink. The inkjet printer, that one uses liquid ink. And laser printers uses toner, which is a powder-based kind of ink. And the last one, they're 3D printers. They use a special kind of plastic which they refer to as filament. Yeah, I can't always pronounce that correctly, but it's called filament. So you can go and Google filament, and you'll find it's a special kind of plastic that a 3D printer uses to make those molds and whatever. So the answer here, guys, is laser. Question 56. One of your users reported that their computer will not turn on. You verify that the power cord and the outlet the computer is plugged into are both working properly. So it's not the cord, it's not the outlet. Which of the following is the hardware component that has most likely failed? Most likely kicked the bucket. Is it the CPU? Now, what does the CPU do, guys? That's the central processing unit. It's used to do calculations. Would that prevent the PC from starting? No, guys. If the CPU has failed, the machine would still start, but you're going to hear lots of beeping sounds. That would be BIOS codes. Is it B, the PSU, which is your power supply unit? So far, I'm inclined to think that, because usually 9 out of 10 times when a computer does not want to start, it's probably because the power supply has kicked the bucket. So the power supply is what essentially provides power to everything in the machine, and if it kicks the bucket, nothing will start. So far the answer is B. Is it C, random access memory? No, guys, that's just temporary memory in the computer. If you don't have any RAM in, or if the RAM has failed, the computer would actually in fact still start, but it's going to once again do some sort of beeping sound to indicate that there's some sort of hardware related issue. That would be a BIOS code once again. D, graphics processing unit. That would be your graphics card. We just call that a GPU for short. If that has failed, guys, you just won't see anything. The machine would still start. You're more than likely still going to get some sort of BIOS code, and you're just going to see a black screen. You're not going to see anything on the screen, but the machine will in fact still start. So the only hardware component that they've listed here that can prevent your PC from starting is the PSU. So that's our answer, folks. Question 57. Which of the following connectors is used to terminate household telephone cabling? Wow. Now this one I've mentioned probably like 3 or 4 times in this video already. So if you guys go back to the previous questions, I can't remember what question number, but I mentioned this many times. So which one of these connectors is used for good old-fashioned telephone cabling? In other words, POTS. P-O-T-S. Plain old telephone system. Does anyone remember what connector that would be? It's RJ11, folks. And RJ11 is used for telephone lines. RJ45 is used for normal network cables, your LAN cables. In other words, Cat5, Cat6, 7, and 8. ST is straight tip. That's used for fiber optic cables. And B and C is normally used for coaxial cables. I'm probably butchering that name, but that's used for the old legacy kind of cables, coaxial cables. We don't really use those anymore. So, yeah, the answer is A, guys. RJ11. Question 58. You are setting up a printer for a small office that does not have an RJ45 jack. So that would be the normal network cable one. The user's computers are all on the same work group and are connected physically to the same network switch. You need to make sure all users can print to the new printer through the switch. Which of the following should you configure? Alright, so everybody is connected to the same network via a network cable. We've established that. One of these people has a small printer that's now probably going to be connected to their PC, most likely via wireless or USB, but that printer does not have a network cable jack. So we cannot connect it directly to the network. We can only install it on someone's machine. Now, how can I go and share that printer over the network, or how can I give other people on the network access to that printer without plugging a network cable into that printer? Now, guys, for that to work, you're going to use something called shared printer. So if you go into your printer's properties or preferences, you'll find there's normally a button or a tab that says shared printer. This is actually something I showed you guys in the course, in one of the modules. Not only did I explain it, but I actually demonstrated it. I actually went into a virtual machine or on my computer and I actually shared my printer. It's an actual practical demo where I showed you guys how to go and do that. So this will be in the exam. Some of you guys might get this question. Some of you guys might not get this question. So if I share the printer, which is installed on my computer, that printer does not need to be plugged into the network. It just needs to be plugged into my machine via USB, or it can be plugged in or connected via Bluetooth or some sort of wireless. If it's installed on my machine, I can share it on a network, and then the other people on the network, they can just type in my computer's name or its IP address, and they will see this printer and just double click on it, and there we go. They will be able to print through my PC to my printer. Pretty cool, right? A print server, in case anyone's curious, is normally something we'll do in a company, a medium to large size company. That's if a printer is actually on the network, which this one is not. If that printer is on a network, everybody would print through the print server, which gives you as an IT person more control over the printer. Bluetooth printing is to print wirelessly. So that could have been an option, but they said all of these people are connected to the same network switch. They mentioned nothing here that these PCs have wireless Bluetooth capability. So since we don't know what capabilities this printer has, or these PCs have, the answer is shared printer. Cloud printing is when you print via the internet, but to do that, this printer needs to be on a network, which it's not. So the only answer that's possible here, guys, is B, shared printer. Question 59, the second last question, guys. And once we finish, please do not disappear. There's some important information I would like to discuss with you guys or mention to you guys, including regarding the next practice questions. So question 59, what cloud model represents a company maintaining some data in on-premises storage and some data in cloud-based storage? So what do we call it when you or a company put data in the cloud, but at the same time you put it on premises? What is that called? Is it called private cloud? No. You'll notice some of those names look familiar, folks. Those are names I've mentioned earlier, which are in fact different kinds of cloud we get. So cloud, you get different kinds of categories. You get private cloud, which is when something is mostly on premises. It's predominantly your own servers. So I don't even know what they call a private cloud. It sounds more like your own resources. So that's when it's just on premises. And that does not sound like the question. Public cloud is when something is just online, completely on someone else's property. Does it sound like our answer or a question? No. The question says it's both in the cloud and on premises. And both A and B is not that. Is it C? Hybrid cloud. Yes. Hybrid cloud is in fact the answer here, folks. Hybrid is when you've got something in the cloud and something on premises, and you've synchronized these two of one another in most cases. You're running a hybrid situation here. So the answer is C. And then D, Loomis Cloud. Guys, I completely made that up. That doesn't even exist. I literally sucked that out of my thumb and I put it randomly in here just for fun and giggles. You know, that doesn't even exist. I completely made that answer up. Alright folks, the last question in this video for now, and I'm going to try and make you guys more practice questions. Just an FYI folks, the practice questions in this video, yes, I made this for the ITF Plus course or the ITF Plus exam, but these questions will in fact work for the newer version of the course and the newer version of the exam that's going to be released. It's not released yet, well at least as I'm making this video, the new course and exam has not been released yet. But it will work for that exam as well. I think it's going to be called Tech Plus, if I'm not mistaken. So the Tech Plus course and exam, it will work for that. I have seen the course content, so I know for a fact it will work on that. Normally, 1 plus 1 will still be 2. They're just going to add a couple of things and remove a couple of things. But predominantly, about 90 to 95% of the stuff is going to remain the same. So if you are studying for the Tech Plus exam, which has not been released yet as I'm making this video, it should still help you with that exam as well, if that's what you're studying for. If you just want to write the old ITF Plus exam, this is more than enough. Okay, so question 60, the last one. Which of the following network devices broadcasts out of all its ports and is often referred to as a dumb device? Is it a repeater? No, guys. A repeater is something we use to, well, rebroadcast a signal, either wirelessly or for a cable. So if it's a network cable, like a LAN cable, they can normally go up to 100 meters. That's what the manual says, but in real life, we know it's only about 70 to 80 meters. So once that signal starts getting too weak, we'll plug it into a repeater, which is going to go and rebroadcast that signal, and you can go a little bit further. Alternatively, a repeater can also be used to rebroadcast a wireless signal to kick the can down further down the road. But it's not going to go and broadcast out of all of its ports. That's not what a repeater does. It's to repeat a signal is what it does. A router is to route or route you or your traffic across the internet. It's so that your machine can access the internet and access what it needs to over the globe, basically. So that's not going to broadcast out of all of its ports. A hub, yes. So both a hub and a switch, they both have multiple ports. And if you go and plug into one of the ports of a hub or a switch, you'd be able to connect to various other machines on the network. Now, the difference between a hub and a switch is the hub is the dumb one. A switch is newer technology. Not that it's new, but compared to a hub, a switch is much newer. A hub, if I plug myself into a hub, into one of those ports, and I send something to you over the network, everybody that's plugged into that hub would get what I sent you. A hub is just going to send that out all of its ports. It has no privacy, basically, what I'm saying. A switch, at first glance, looks the same as a hub, but it will only send the data to the intended recipient. Now, it's weird. Hubs are still mentioned as course. It's still mentioned and asked in the exam, and yet we don't actually use those. Those devices, guys, are extinct. You'll be lucky to find it in someone's garage in an old dusty box somewhere. We do not use those. They're extinct. The only devices we use nowadays is a switch. Alright folks, so that was the last question for this specific video. I'm going to try and make more after this one. Maybe that'll help you guys. I don't know. So guys, if you have not done it already, please give this video a like. Help your homie out. It does help me a lot. And if you give it a like, then normally YouTube will present this to more people out there that actually needs it, that cannot afford to pay for study material and all that. And if you would like to know when I release more practice questions or any other content on the channel for maybe lessons or practice questions, maybe consider subscribing as well, then you won't miss that out. And then guys, just a special shout out and thank you to each and every one of you guys sponsoring this channel. Even if you're just dropping cool, nice comments in the comment section, I appreciate that. So for those of you clicking on the thanks button below the video, I know it's not always available, that button, depends on your country. Thank you very much, guys. To those of you buying me coffee and milkshake, thank you. And to all of the Patreons and PayPal donors, thank you very much, guys. If you'd like to sponsor this channel in some sort of way, you can do that by finding the details in the video description down below, guys. I'll appreciate it if you do that, but that's completely optional, obviously. And then, guys, here's a list of some of the Patreon sponsors. Guys, thank you very much for sponsoring the channel. I appreciate it. And here's a list of some of the PayPal sponsors. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate your donations. And then lastly, guys, before we conclude this video, in case you don't know, I do have a Discord server. So if you know what Discord is, there's a Discord server. It's called Free IT Training. The last time I checked, there was like 1,000 something people in it. I don't know. There's probably way more by now. I'm one of the people you'll find in that server. There's other trainers in that server as well. So if you're studying for this exam or any other exam, or if you just want to be in a community of like-minded people, or if you want to help other people studying for this exam, you're more welcome to join that free community. And yeah, we can have nice discussions there, or you can ask your questions there if you're getting stuck, or maybe answer someone else's question if someone else is stuck. Either or. Alright folks, that is me. I shall see you in the next video.